of Kilifi plus church plus all of them are agents of death. You know, and it goes on. The standard coverage today is page 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and page 22. It's all about coronavirus. This the deputy governor. I mean, this was a whoa.
It was a dumb move on his part, don't you think?
Yeah.
I mean, if we're going to...
Whoa.
I mean, why? Honestly, it was not...
The worst possible example of somebody who has a sense of impunity.
Honestly.
You'd think that the virus understands that he's a deputy governor. The virus doesn't. This virus is indiscriminate. It's democratic. And if you're to look at what's happening in the West, it's really very sad.
I wish he had even, said, I'm taking myself in to be tested. And then the test has come out positive. So he's like, all right, so I can violate the quarantine. If he was using that as justification, perhaps. But just say,
I'm fine.
Get
out of here.
But you know what the problem again is? It's not even the virus. What the virus is doing. Yes, what the virus is doing. It's going the deeper recesses of our minds and the souls of the country. Not the souls of the individuals. It's telling us who we are. It's telling us, because you have examples around the world. We have examples of people who ignored examples around the world. And we are seeing what happened to them. And yet, even from a leadership perspective, you have this halting. It is clear that we should have been on lockdown a week ago. And then these are the discussions that you want to have piecemeal. Have them when there's a lockdown. So at least you know, okay, people are in one place now. Discuss what else you want to do. Yeah. Here, it's this information, and then there's that information. Then decide for yourself. Decide for yourself.
The government expecting people to actually make a decision.
And actually, at some level, Eric, you've said this even last week severally. This one is not one of those ones where you wait for the government directive. Decide you want to live. Just for decide you.
This one is simple.
What do you want?
What do you want?
This one is simple.
You've seen how the government goes about its business. You want to follow them, or do you want to live? Now, if you want to live, then take the appropriate action. You've been told. It's not complicated what you need to do. Just do it.
Why is it that people wouldn't do it? It hasn't localized.
No, it hasn't sunk in. The reality and the gravity of this thing has not sunk in for a number of people, and that's clear. Even from the things that we saw yesterday, of people still going to church. I mean, I said I stayed home this weekend, but the number of places I was invited to come and do, I was like, really? Are you existing in an alternate universe? Yeah. Do you understand what is really going on now? I mean, even and then when the edict for bars to be closed yesterday. I mean, come on. Yeah, apply some common sense here, and I think we need to be tough on this when it comes to sending that particular message. When they say stay at home and don't go into public gatherings, it's not because there's lack of what to say or lack of advice to give. There's a reason why. And I think, it has to get very simple to that very simple message. You want to live or you want to die? Choose one. Which one are we talking about now? Because it seems that that's how grave we need to get at this point, to say, you know what, guys, this one is not a joke. It's the real thing. This is not a rehearsal. There's no take two.
It's still too far for many people.
Even if you say that, it's still too far. Eric is right. You see, remember, you talk about death, people die.
Yeah.
Here we're talking about death and no one has died yet.
Yes, and yes, exactly. You talk about people being sick. And people are sick all the time.
And you don't know somebody who has...
And you don't know anyone who has actually...
And you haven't. It hasn't localized. It has not come to you.
It hasn't sunk.
It's not a reality that you know. I mean,
it's an alternate reality. It's this thing is happening somewhere else.
Yeah. The sad truth is that unfortunately we're going to get to the point where it'll be too late to even think about maybe what I could have done.
You're saying we might get to the point.
We're going to get. No, I'm saying we're going to get to the point where it will be too late to say I
one
wish.
Church, not several. Us, we have several churches.
They're still doing this dalliance with death.
Yes.
Yeah.
Not one, several. Korea had one.
How many nightclubs do we have? How many bars and restaurants and churches and all these public places but for me, it goes back into January. How many flights have arrived into this country?
And they keep
China,
arriving.
and then you say, all right, so this thing has moved out of China. Where did it go to next?
Italy.
Start ticking. How many flights from those places?
How many flights from the UK? We still have them. They were never stopped.
Yeah.
No, they were
never stopped. Even when it was clear the numbers in the UK were rising, they were never stopped.
No.
Flights from Italy, were they stopped? No. Flights from continental Europe, were they stopped? No. Flight from America, were they stopped?
No.
Travelers, okay, a flight from China was stopped. Travelers from China, were they stopped? No.
So
people are still arriving in the country.
And what
Ethiopian is doing Shanghai to Addis to Nairobi. KQ is doing Bangkok. People who are coming from Shanghai go to Thailand, and then they come in. British Airways, all of these airlines are bringing people to the country.
And from what we have observed, this thing tends to be imported.
Yep.
It could be homegrown, but there isn't evidence to support that.
It was very clear that this thing, if it was ever going to hit Kenya, it was going to be brought in. So
that was known from a while back.
And we have a door, and we know where the door is. And you keep the door open, and then
and when
come
someone,
in, please.
Yes, and when someone points it out, they're an enemy of development. There are all sorts of negative things. The door was left wide open. Essentially, we are saying it's like the government couldn't have done a better job if they wanted to plot to kill its own people. It can't get better than this.
Out in the open, it didn't even need a time. You didn't even need secret plots in this one.
No.
Out in the open, clear, simple.
No. But it also tells you what they think of the citizenry. It also tells you
what they don't think, or what they don't regard, or how they don't regard the citizenry.
How the level at which they disregard. The word regard shouldn't be used here, except with the dis. Okay. Consider the people among us who are most likely to be a problem are our leaders. They're the ones who benchmark. They're the ones who travel. They're the ones who go to all these countries. And they're the ones who've been traveling ever since China had the problem. They've been traveling. More than anybody else, they've been traveling.
Yep.
And they're the ones who go to public gatherings. They're the ones who talk to people. So if you're talking about locally speaking, the people who are most likely to bring the coronavirus to the people are our leaders.
We can't dismiss the fact that, we have this particular leader who was in Germany for whatever he was there for. And the same time yesterday, we have Angela Merkel.
This one, I'm not mentioning leader. The deputy governor of
Kilifi County,
Gideon Saburi.
Right.
Mentioned by name.
There we go.
Yes.
We can't now separate the two that, he was in Germany, and now we have Angela Merkel, who has now quarantined herself because she was into contact with a doctor.
And what had she gone to do?
Positive. She had gone for a vaccine.
And the doctor apparently was already infected. Now you tell me.
So, and here
what has she done? Gone into quarantine.
Isolated herself. And now here we have
some
Uncle Gideon running around
all over the
country.
Our elected leaders. Now nobody has mentioned. I keep mentioning this in other fora. Nobody is mentioning our members of parliament. Those guys are as quiet as
mice.
and it hits them. You know why? Remember when it first came out, some people confessed, I was on that flight.
Yeah.
Then silence.
Nothing.
Many of them have a time to reflect how often they travel.
But what's the role of parliament?
Now, this is when we actually need
calling out the government. Now, this is when they've been quiet completely. No, when this thing is over, we're going to. We shall revisit.
Why are we waiting for this thing to be over? While it is ongoing, they must be told.
16 minutes after 6 o'clock. Good morning. This is a Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation.
Classic soul,
Weather
R&B, smooth jazz.
Nairobi, mostly cloudy today. Chance of rain later with highs of 26. Taking a look then into Nyeri at 15 degrees. It's mostly cloudy as well. Chance of rain with highs of 24. It's 14 degrees in Nakuru and partly cloudy. Showers expected there later as well with highs of 26. In Eldoret at 13 degrees is also mostly cloudy. The forecast is rain there as well. Highs of 26. In Kisumu is partly cloudy at 21 degrees. Chance of rain with highs of 29 and lows of 20. In Mombasa, it's light showers already at 26 degrees, likely to carry on through the day with highs of 32. In Malindi at 28 degrees, it's partly cloudy. Showers expected later with highs of 32 and lows of 27. In Kampala, it's cloudy this morning. Moving on then on into East Africa at 20 degrees. Showers expected later with highs of 26 and lows of 19. In Dar es Salaam, it's showers already being experienced through most parts of the city and country. 25 degrees right now. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 30. In Johannesburg at 13 degrees is clear skies, opening up into some showers later with highs of 22. Taking a look into Lagos at 28 degrees this morning, it's clear. Showers expected later with highs of 33 and lows of 28. Take a look into Europe in Paris at 4 degrees. It's clear skies this morning. Going to be sunny conditions through the day with highs of 13 and lows of 1. In London at 6 degrees, it's clear all through as well with highs of 12 and lows of 2. And wrap things up in New York at 3 degrees and partly cloudy conditions to pursue through the day with highs of 7 and lows of 2.
Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
In the last 72 hours, however, we have received confirmation of an additional 8 cases. Out of the latest 8 cases, 5 are Kenyans and 3 are foreign nationals. The foreign nationals are 2 French people and 1 Mexican. All the 8 are imported cases from Europe and America. We are tracing 363 persons who had come into contact with these patients. So far, we have also an additional 3 people waiting
That's
processing
20 minutes after
at
6 o'clock.
Pagathi.
Well, that's what we're hearing. We heard from Health CS Mutahi Kagwe yesterday. Well, he was announcing new cases. All the cases that we have so far have been imported from Europe and America. It's interesting to note that in all those days, we never got any case that's imported from China.
Interesting.
More interesting is that the government has never given us a correct position on the flights that come into the country. Because if it's being imported, it's definitely not by sea.
Yes.
Yes, and it isn't coming by road either.
No.
Indeed.
Predominantly, it's coming by air. And if we know the avenue by which this disease is being imported, it's through human beings, why has the government not taken a position on the flights that come in? Are we more concerned about the money we make?
Yes.
And is money more important? Because it seems to be clearly it's more important than the value of life.
Oh, in terms of priorities,
Those who are left
Bill
need
Gates
to live well.
top-notch. Yeah.
City. You've got to think about it that way.
Actually, this now, my friend, is what is the funny bit in this. This one doesn't care what your job is. It doesn't care.
Your status, nothing.
No,
It
doesn't
take
care
any
your
of that
family.
into
But doesn't.
consideration.
This one actually is random. It can get anyone. And this thing of the rich who will remain, nothing. My friend, if you look at Europe, yes, many people are dying. But even people who you would think are protected, have taken protection, are dying because of that, just that exposure. People in leadership. The truth is, you don't know who has it. You know, this one isn't like HIV.
Any prominent
You could
leader who's
see-
died in Europe?
So far, we haven't heard of anybody who's
We haven't
died,
heard
but
of
the ones
anyone.
who
Just
got
heard of infected, yes.
those who were infected.
Yeah.
Yes.
And they're not dying.
Let us wait and
But
see.
you hear 700 people have died in Italy.
None of them are prominent.
None of them is. Yes.
Well, we haven't been told the full story. We
It's
don't
killing
have
the
details.
Wananchi.
It may be killing the Wananchi, but they're the majority. The leaders are not the majority.
They're not the majority.
They're taking care of themselves.
Yes.
They look after themselves. But if they were, they wouldn't have got it, would they? Remember, HIV you had to acquire. You paid for it. you begged for it, you sought it. This one arrives at you. You don't have to ask for it.
And you don't have to go too far to get it.
And you actually don't even know who has it. That's why it's getting people unawares. You don't know. It doesn't show.
All the more reason why then people are saying, because you don't know, because of the invisibility of this virus, that's why then you're being asked, stay at home.
There's something Eric is saying here which has just sunk. If the leaders in the West are taking care of themselves...
How much more here?
Yes, exactly. So it means they're really not that worried.
No, they're not.
So if they're not worried...
They have facilities ready for them. They have, all those things.
So then they
It's not their problem, really.
Not really. So they can't take it too seriously.
Because they're taken care of at the end of the day, or they would be.
So they think.
Well, East Africa records surge in infections. Figures of confirmed cases stood at 17 in Rwanda, while Ethiopia had 11, and Tanzania had 6 cases as at yesterday. Countries continue to register a surge in the number of people affected by corona as the pandemic continues to cause havoc across the globe. Now, understanding that a lot of countries are at the place whereby Italy is saying they wished they had taken measures. This is week 2, where now we see a doubling of the initial numbers in a lot of countries, from Rwanda to Kenya. Uganda, interestingly, still just has 1 case of this. Uganda registered its first case yesterday, while the number of those infected in Rwanda and Ethiopia have already hit the double-digit figure. Again,
I'm wondering why we have so many cases in Rwanda. I mean, if you're talking about travel and all.
Interestingly, for them, the same thing is that it was imported.
Yes,
right?
all of them are imported.
And then
you have so many cases going into Rwanda, and the number of flights that land at JKI. I mean, you can't compare JKI and Kigali.
No,
in terms of numbers.
It brings
in terms of largesse,
a new discussion. Is there honesty in our reporting? It's a question you must ask. And if you ask the question of a government that is known more for its dishonesty than honesty, then I think you can do.
So is it possible that there are people who are not presenting themselves to be tested?
I would take it even further, that it is even possible that the numbers that we're being presented with are official numbers and they're not necessarily the real numbers. Official is what the government chooses to tell you.
Interesting. That's very interesting, because I
think the number 19 would still be too low to
worry about.
No.
Given the number of people who come into this country.
When it gets into the tens, goes beyond 20 and then goes to 50 and hundreds, then now it's easy for the government to play out, to tinker with the numbers. Because accountability. Right now, 8 new cases.
Eric,
and they're only in 2 facilities.
You are being kind.
Only Mbagathi
and you're
JKIA.
using the sensible logic that you, Eric, would apply in such a situation. You're forgetting that we are talking about the very people who told us we had isolated wards ready when they were not ready. And they kept telling us they were ready, and they were not ready. And when they even asked to explain, said, in answer to that, they said, we have trained people. And then we
had nurses going on strike.
We have not been trained.
Look, this is not naysaying, just going by what has happened.
Is the case as it
consistently. Is. They say this, it isn't so. They say this, it isn't so. They say this, it isn't so. So what makes me think, why would I then believe that the numbers they're giving me is accurate?
So Ethiopia is also tinkering with the numbers. Because also Ethiopia is a very big hub.
They could very well...
In terms of travel...
The only way you disapprove naysayers like myself, who seem to think that the numbers may not necessarily be true, is you provide evidence.
To that?
Yes, exactly, to the contrary, because that shouldn't be difficult.
Well, listen to what Yoweri Museveni said. He announced after the first case was found yesterday that starting today, no person, not maybe, no, Ugandan, non-Ugandan, foreign, whatever, nobody will be allowed to enter the country. We have decided to prohibit all passenger planes coming from outside Uganda from landing at any of the airports in the country. Only cargo planes will be allowed to fly in and out. He said this in a televised address to the nation yesterday. The patient in Uganda is a 36-year-old Ugandan male who arrived from Dubai on Saturday aboard Ethiopian Airlines. It is reported he left Uganda on the 17th of March for business in Dubai.
Oh my goodness. He just went... How many days?
Yeah, on the 17th.
Oh, no.
Today is the 23rd.
I'm sure he's just sitting there wondering,
why did I go? Further, President Museveni ordered that no Ugandan or foreign national be allowed to enter the country through land or sea entry ports, except for cargo truck drivers, whose crew members should not exceed 3 people. In Rwanda, the government on Saturday outlined strict measures to contain the spread of the virus, including a 2-week total lockdown that excludes emergency services. Earlier measures included closure of all schools and religious institutions. It also banned social gatherings such as weddings and parties. So now Museveni is saying this one is too much. This one case is too much. Ugandan, foreign, be you who. You will not come in from land, air or sea. It will not happen. Forget about it.
Stay where you are.
Stay where you are until this thing is finished. Don't even give us the drama of having to deal with you and answer questions.
You're not coming.
You're not coming.
I'm a Kenyan.
Oh, I'm Ugandan. My mother is sick. No.
All
In
right.
the next
My wife is
72
about to
hours,
deliver.
you have time to come home.
No, it's not going to happen. Forget it. The man said one case is too much.
You know, Eric, you know how...
And already they went into the lockdown.
Yes.
Yeah.
Clubs closed.
With no cases in Uganda, with 0 cases in Uganda, Museveni said, forget it.
We're not inviting it.
No. And now with this one case, even if you're a Ugandan, you're not coming.
And what are we doing?
Doing a dalliance with death.
Until Wednesday.
Wednesdays now, those ones who are still coming and they were on the way already, let them just come. Then after that,
and they'll go into a government-designated quarantine facility.
Which one?
Which has not been which we haven't been told. This is the government. All right.
Now you understand why I was talking about the figures, Eric. I think you've got it.
I need a pain.
If there are so many things which are unclear, why then should
I still want to believe that we have 17 cases.
I want to believe we have more.
Here's my logic.
I want to believe that it's the
there
truth,
are more.
but unfortunately, There
are more people who are infected in the country. That is for a fact.
But it's not
those
collated.
who have gone and presented themselves and they've gotten tested and their tests have come out negative and they've been taken to Bagathi and KNH, 17.
Eric, let me give you
17 or 15?
Eric,
15.
let me give you my logic, okay? When you have a transit point as busy as JKIA, and you have the sort of people who come into this country on and off, and the frequency with which they come in, we could very well be an epicenter for this disease, just by virtue of Nairobi being a hub. That's it. And if you look at the care or the lack of it that the government has actually put in place at the airport to ensure all these measures about self-quarantine and testing are actually lived up to. If you look at the failure, if you look at the lack of information, the obscurity, the selective information that you're given, if there was an element of distrust, it is now full mistrust. I am simply extrapolating. If on simple, serious matters like this, we are not being told the truth, okay, a little politeness, we are being told untruths or half the truths.
A lie.
Why would I then believe anything to do with the numbers? Because the numbers are a clear indication of what I'm saying. That many more people probably have even exhibited. Eric, part of the reason why we have problems with the treatment for HIV is because numbers were tinkered with. Now, the people who are tinkering with these numbers didn't seem to understand basic arithmetic. If you're given $10,000 and you've got a target of, say, 100, and you want to prove that you're very good, and you manage to treat 150, the donor will say, I give you more money than you needed. It's not complicated.
So the 10,000 can cater for 150.
Yeah, so what it means is we need to reduce this thing by maybe another 50%. So they'll give you less because it is you who has given them that information. Now, people don't seem to understand that if you had only done what you're supposed to do, probably spent the money instead of cooking the figures, you would have shown that the money you were being given was actually not enough to do the work. The donor would have understood and said, we need to give you perhaps more. But we put ourselves in a box and we can't move away from it. It's the same mindset. What's catching up with us now is a mindset that the government has had, we've spoken about, and they have seen no need to change it. They just throw words at things and carelessly at that.
And, there needs to be, we talk about a lot of times when we look at the progress of any country, if you want to take a minute away from Corona and then bring it back, we look at the development of any country and say that there needs to be a buy-in from several sectors, whether you're looking at social sectors, economic, as well as government coming together, private sector coming to join with the public sector. In this time where you need messaging to be very clear, there needs to be a collective effort here. You can't have the government saying one thing, religious groups saying something totally different. Across board, everybody's saying something totally different in a time where the messaging needn't be more concise and clear than stay at home.
Okay, so let's come back to the news. Huh?
But this is the news.
KCB.
Take a look at the news. 28 minutes to 7 o'clock. Take a look at traffic first, and then we look at what other headlines we have in the newspapers. Good morning.
24/7. classic soul.
Well, let's look at how things will be on this Monday morning. Nothing really except a big deal here. Fatal accident along Mombasa Road at the Gateway Mall involving 2 trucks. Right now, waiting for emergency services to get there. But you want to approach with caution. It's affecting traffic in both directions, so it's moving slowly. Not much on the roads because of the current situation, but because of that, that's going to cause a bit of a problem. Wayaki Way, there's no problems there at all. It's smooth all the way. Not much in terms of vehicles on the road. The Thika Superhighway looks fantastic, clear all the way in and out from town. Coming off of Jogo Road as well, it looks fantastic because people are able to get in and out really, really quickly. So getting into a matatu, you want to wash your hands. You want to make sure you have your sanitizer on before getting in there. We'll give you more updates as we go along. Let us know what you see. Spice FMKE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let's see how things would change or remain the same this Monday morning.
Spice FM, Malindi.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Spice FM.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Of course, everybody has been having is trying to figure out, when you hear of one case that's been confirmed, who has been in contact with this one person, right? And how do you trace and track that back? So the government is doing something about that, and today they're going to launch an app called the M-Safari. And the app will be in contact tracing as it moves to tame the spread of the coronavirus. This will be deployed to all PSVs. All PSVs will have this particular app. And what happens is when you board a matatu, the matatu crew will ask you to give their details, to give your details, your phone number. They put in the phone number of everybody who has entered during that trip. So it traces and tracks. This is the person who has entered. I don't know whether they do the same when you leave the matatu. Whenever you disembark from the matatu, but there's an app basically that's going to be used to track and do all those things. It's not been clearly explained in the story. So
each driver or conductor essentially each crew would have this on one smartphone, perhaps.
Yes. So they registered themselves on star 483 star hash, 42 hash.
The matatu people register themselves?
Yes.
Okay.
The application, let me read the story. Matatus, taxis and motorbike operators will be required to collect contact details of every passenger which will automatically register on the M-Safari platform. So, when you're boarding the matatu or the bus or the taxi, give your number. All PSVs, including their owners and respective circles, will be required to enroll on the platform using their vehicle registration numbers. So this one, including the owner, not just the...
So as you're getting on the matatu or the bus or whatever, you give your name and your phone number?
As
you're getting on, as they're calling you. South B.
Yeah. Maybe when the matatu starts moving, Jina yako mzee? Number? Jina yako?
Okay.
But if you have the number, that ought to actually give you those details.
Yeah. They're going to have fun spelling my name.
Details, isn't it?
Yeah.
But of significance, the government has also indicated that they are going to be giving free sanitizers.
Yes.
And they're also going to be giving free antiseptic washes.
Yes.
So that... Now, I'd like to see the rollout of this one. This one requires evidence. Yes, it does.
And proper mapping and planning.
Yes, and while we're talking about
I think the most basic places would be PSVs, like you're saying, because those are the ones we've been saying, come on, you're telling us that everybody who boards onto our matatu needs to sanitize. Give us the sanitizers. First one. And then the markets. I think that would be a very good place to start.
It would be a good place to start, but while we're mentioning things that are positive, there's a media organization that actually announced that they were going to be giving 10 million shillings worth of soaps to the underprivileged. And again, they said they're going to roll it out. I don't know more about it. Maybe you do. Maybe you've heard about where they've taken it, where they've rolled it out. KCB has also, last week, they announced 10 billion.
Fantastic.
10 billion they've set aside for SMEs. Those who have taken loans through the KCB M-Pesa platform, they are partnering with KCB. SMEs, they are going to be making available 5,000 to 10,000 shillings, something that, and lengthening the period of time within which you are allowed to pay.
So you could borrow again, essentially.
Yes, and they're also reducing the charges on it, the interest rates and so forth. And they're making it possible for people who are in business to continue conducting business. Through this particular platform.
That's brilliant.
Yes, it is. It's something that's laudable. Yes, and it's something that we must praise them for. And we also urge other finance institutions, these ones who are making the tons of billions every year, to consider putting aside. It isn't as though they're giving it as a gift. It's again promoting business, but promoting it in a user-friendly manner. So that people are able to access credit, people are able to access money.
Right.
Yes, this is commendable. This is very, very commendable.
There's also the other matter of people who have loans. You know that I'm still not understanding why the banks would say, if you have an ongoing loan, present yourself to the bank and have a discussion with the bank. I mean, it should be just come out clearly and say, this is what we're going to do. We're going to give a moratorium for a year.
The reluctance to have a moratorium has been clear in this case, that nobody wants to come out and make a blanket statement on this is the way it's going to be. Come and have a discussion. Yeah, many have said that, you know what, there should be a halt on, your loans for your credit facility for an X number of months. I mean, don't leave it vague or grey. Let people know exactly what the case is. One place where we do know that things are going on, the new sheriff in town hits the ground running to rid the city of garbage heaps. Barely a day in office, the new sheriff in town, Nairobi Metropolitan Services Director General Mohammed Badi, hit the ground running with the first assignment being tackling the garbage menace. We talked a couple of days ago about the fact that Nairobi is in a shambles when it comes to garbage. The National Youth Service trucks and bulldozers roared in Shaurimoyo and Majengo, clearing mounds of garbage piled up on roads in the settlements. Major General Badi said already 250 tons of garbage had been collected from areas including Burma and Muthurwa markets, as well as Dandora. I quote, "Garbage collection is one of the priority projects which we are going to focus on and ensure are implemented to their fruitful end," he said while addressing journalists during the handover of the Nairobi Regeneration Program to NMS last Friday. So he's hit the ground running, this man, and he says that he wants to have Nairobi cleaned up. And there's a master plan. The master plan, waste collection and transportation, 3 R's, reduce, reuse and recycle, as well as intermediate treatment, final disposal, organizational restructuring and human resources, legal and institutional reform, financial management, private sector involvement promotion, and community participation and promotion.
Sounds very good on paper.
Done. Yeah, it sounds good on paper.
He's also going to be meeting with the CECs today. There's a meeting that's scheduled for today with the CECs for all the departments that have been handed over to him. This is health, transport, county public works, utilities and ancillary services, and the county government planning and development services. So that meeting with the CECs is scheduled to take place today. And the CEC for health has already confirmed that this is going to be taking place. Hitan Majevdia. Did you know that's a county health executive for Nairobi?
No.
His name is Hitan Majevdia. He says, yes, we are going to be discussing things. Among the issues to be deliberated today is the decongestion of Kenyatta National Hospital, because the workers there are now focusing a lot on the COVID-19 isolation center. They will also be discussing the ongoing equipment of Malusi Hospital with a 66-bed capacity, which is almost complete. If we can implement these things within the 100 days as directed by the president, then we'll be able to ensure the county's health system is robust and able to cater for patients effectively. That's what the CEC is saying. The Lands and Housing CEC, Charles Karich, says the meeting will focus on reports on sector priorities and propose solutions for the challenges ailing the capital. He says the CECs affected by the transfer of functions would still be stationed at City Hall, while the Nairobi Metropolitan Services would be at the KICC. So Major General Badi will be sitting at KICC and will be just calling people across. Just cross the gate, come.
Come over.
From City Hall, just come.
Okay. Well, not so good news, but the country's food security is put at risk again by soils laced with the deadly aflatoxin. Agricultural researchers have attributed the high levels of aflatoxin to maize and other foods, and they've attributed this to soil infections. Kenya Agricultural and Livestock Research and Organization Cairo Director General Eliud Kiplimo Kigerer says the country's food problems are accompanied by the fact that aflatoxin is in the soil. It is all over the country, he said. We have not understood why it is high in some areas. Kenya Bureau of Standards Metrology and Testing Director Henry Rotich blamed poor storage facilities and heavy rains. So the two combined are making this bad. Regular inspections and tests for aflatoxin are carried out to ensure that the maize flour and other products meet recommended standards. In Kenya, the allowable level in maize is 10 parts per billion. He said the government agencies and other stakeholders, including retail outlets and consumers, are expected to maintain proper storage of food products to check on aflatoxin contamination. Poor harvesting and storage also blamed for this. And extension officers are required to carry out regular soil testing and put in place measures to contain the spread of the toxin, which is mainly caused by fungi. Now, as to whether these measures will be put in place to make sure that food security is sustained and maintained is a different story. But they found the problem. It's in the soil. And to say that...
so our soil has aflatoxin, it has too much acidity, it has... Do you have soil?
A lot of things going wrong. So you can't escape it in the way the food then is grown, is what they've basically told us. Right?
How did you arrive at this?
Got to this dire circumstance. Doing soil testing. Soil testing is something that needs to be carried out regularly.
Agricultural extension officers
are not doing their
when
job.
you removed those agricultural extension services,
this is what
things go down.
About.
Things go down because it's not coordinated and organized. Now we're talking about still food. Rice price shoots up in Mwea as demand soars. The price of rice in Mwea area of Kirinyaga County has shot up due to high demand by customers who are now engaged in panic buying over the COVID-19 pandemic. A spot check at Wanguru town, where a dozen rice mills and hundreds of rice traders sell their produce, revealed vibrant trading activities as customers checked in en masse to buy the produce. A kilogram of the popular aromatic Pishori rice, which last month was selling at 120, is now selling at 130 and 150.
Eric, was it last week or the week before when there were issues about the state or the health state of the rice being sold in our supermarkets?
Yeah.
And it was covered quite extensively.
Yep.
Has that gone away?
Nope.
So we're panic buying poison.
Yep.
We've been eating poison.
I don't know. You laugh because you don't want to cry, right?
Oh, no. We're having a conversation. And in conversations, people laugh, people snigger, people dismiss. It's conversation.
Yep.
So, yes, you can't laugh. I mean, it's when you're surrounded by dire circumstances, just when you think this one is dire, something equally threatening like aflatoxin rears its head. But Eric, let me just go back a little bit. Italy, some famous person actually died from the coronavirus. The gentleman is actually called Lorenzo Sanz. He was the president of Real Madrid.
Oh, yes, that man.
Now, that man, if you're president of a successful football club, it means you have money. Money didn't help you, did it?
Money and influence.
Oh, yes, he had. If you talk about influence, we don't know what he owned or what he didn't own, but he clearly is a man of influence and had means. Yes.
And yet he died.
And
Yes.
yet he died.
And yes, he died.
Well, indeed. This is the situation with Kenya's biggest conversation. Remember, the live stream is up. Spice FM KE on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And www.spicefm.co.ke. We are broadcasting in Nairobi, 94.4, wherever you are. Mombasa, 87.9. 102.5, Kisumu. 96.0, Nakuru. Eldoret, 96.7. 90.9 in Nyeri and Malindi, 97.7. We're taking a look at the newspaper headlines. Remember, you can download the standard e-paper app from Google Play Store and Apple App Store, and just one subscription fee. You get to access the Standard from wherever you are. You don't need to worry about getting out and getting locked in. You can still read the newspaper from wherever you are. The Standard is online. Standard e-paper app. Download it. Google Play Store, Apple App Store. Good morning. It's 6:45.
102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. On online, mobile, and on radio. www.spiceradio.co.ke. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning.
Kenya, you can employ 1,000 of them, then have the 2,000 go and assist Europe, like Italy, because clearly
they're trained.
They're trained,
Yeah.
and Italy could use some help. We've seen Cuban doctors going to Italy, so if you have medics here who are willing to go and assist, why not? And most of them are young, so
And nurses?
I don't know the number of nurses,
It's
but
also in the thousands.
yes, those are
I think
more
it's
than
one
the
of those
doctors.
things that we should basically consider. So how many can we absorb locally? How many can we deal with? How many can we... But maybe before we send them out, let's first of all observe how we are doing.
Not even sending them out. Why don't we see how we can deploy them locally? All right? The first thing they could do is just reduce the number of people who work in the civil service. You can't tell me that all these people who work there are relevant. Okay, principal secretary, half principal secretary, and something else.
Director of everything.
The director of this, director of the other quarter, the other eighth.
Each with a PA.
Yeah.
Yes. You can reduce. I mean, the other day, we saw some people in the communication department within State House. 5 people were there who were removed from the offices. Has State House stopped functioning? No.
It is still working.
So you actually
still
have to ask
functioning.
yourself, so what exactly were these people doing?
The positions were abolished.
Precisely, which means they went
not
home.
needed.
Gone.
You're not
so
needed.
all
So
I'm
it's
saying
not just the person who's gone. We are not
The
going to replace you. The
the
position
entire
is
position.
gone.
yeah, vanished. So this is the time to rationalize the entire public service and ask what do we need? It's clear we need people who are trained medically, and we have them.
We have them.
Important. We already have them trained,
Well-
not training, trained.
Already trained tamaking.
But we have an oversupply of doctors then.
No, we
No,
don't have
we
an
don't.
oversupply.
We don't.
Far from it.
The whole country has, I think, just almost 13,000 registered medical practitioners and dentists. And those are including the ones who have retired, the ones like me who are in other professions. So the ones that are in active practice are about half of that.
6,000.
Yes, for a population of 47.5.
Yeah.
We do not have enough doctors.
So even if we absorb these 3,000,
It's
we'll
still
go
not
to
enough.
9,000.
Still far from it.
What's our optimum? How many do we need for our population of 46 million?
It should be, I think the ratio now is 1 to 10,000, and it should be 1 to, I have to do my quick math. It should be 1 to 500.
So we should be having
Are you
some
kidding?
Yes, one doctor.
800, if you're pushing it around
1 to
800.
500 people.
Yes.
Yes, one doctor for every 500
And you're doing
people
1
in
to
the population.
10,000 now?
Yes.
That's
One-
under 20%.
One full
But
doctor.
of course.
Yes.
Yes.
That's under
There cannot be a half a
20%
doctor.
penetration.
Yeah. I don't think there's any country that has achieved that ratio, but most are trying. You'd find that they are like 1 is to 1,000, which is fairly
It's
fine.
considered reasonable.
So we
Yeah.
can do 1 to 2,000, being who we are.
No.
No. Even with the numbers
is
that
not
we have, we are
No.
far from
Even
it.
the current crop of medical students, if they all graduated, we still would be far
I'm saying
away.
if we were to do now, our optimum should be something like that, 1 to 2,000.
Yeah, maybe when at our very best. So we're still far from it.
Okay, let's look at food a little bit more. Still around health and such, retailers will face stricter pesticide residue regulations from the 1st of May. We will get to the 1st of May. Supermarkets will, from May 1st, be required to comply with new regulations that require them to ensure food produce which they buy is tested for higher pesticide residues and other contaminants in a bid to safeguard the welfare of consumers and also to maintain sustainability of food as we go along. This follows the establishment of the Kenya Standards 1758, which has been developed by stakeholders in horticulture sector with KEBS Secretariat. The rule will now require all vegetable fruits and beans, now these are pulses, to be subjected to the same quality standards as those going to export markets because they were placed on shelves. Under these new standards, the produce will be tested twice for quality at the source and at the supermarket before they are offered to customers. Coming in from the 1st of May,
Okay.
then looking towards sustainability and health in a general way.
Okay. Good thing. 30,000 jobs at risk as coronavirus ravages airlines. Kenya's economy stands to lose more than 30,000 jobs as well as billions of shillings in revenue as the coronavirus pandemic attacks the aviation industry. So the aviation body says job cuts could cut passenger numbers by 622,000 and result in 13.2 billion shillings loss of revenue. Imagine.
That's tragic.
This is according to the International Air Transport Association, IATA. African governments are asking Kenya and other African governments to urgently support airlines or risk the worst for their economies. IATA Director General Alexander Dajuniak said airlines were facing a liquidity and existential crisis.
Well, this is the thing, because it seems to be, it's almost like a catch-22, because the very business is to transport people around the world, right?
Yes.
And if people are not traveling, then your business, it sounds so simple, but yes, at the end of the day, your business suffers.
Yes.
Right? Because people are not traveling. And then you have governments who then are looking at protecting their state sovereignty and are closing their borders for kind of protection. They've put a ban on flights and say, look, nobody's going in or out. You know, however they were being carried, it's not going to happen.
Flight grounded is loss of cash.
Absolutely. Inadvertently, they're going to suffer loss of commercial value because nobody's flying. Now, in terms of helping out, you're not going to say, okay, now people start traveling. That's not going to happen. But in terms of helping and buffering, what are you looking at then? Packages for national carriers, for example? What kind of help then would be offered in this case? If IATA is saying, you know, governments, you need to help your national carriers, what would you have them do?
The Standard has given an entire page coverage to Kenya Airways, and it was page 6. And it says, look, so coronavirus, like we've been told by doctors, it's affecting those who are vulnerable. It's the same even for businesses. Kenya Airways, for instance, was already vulnerable.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't doing well.
Yeah.
So coronavirus comes and hits it. KQ
Flatline.
is exposed, highly exposed. And it's talking about, you know, like the number of shareholders, people who own, ordinary shareholders of KQ, 800,000. 558 billion shillings is the amount of pending bills that the government hopes to clear soon. So it needs to take that money there. It needs to start thinking about how can we sustain KQ. KQ has already gotten cash injections from the government a number of times.
Everything they're writing here is not the problem that KQ has, because everything they explain defies logic. It defies logic in this sense. This was a company that was making money. It was clear it was making money. Then two things happened. We started buying planes. And when we start buying planes, we don't even buy them directly from the manufacturers. We buy them through
Agents.
middlemen. And then oil prices start falling. And then we enter a contract to supply, for supply of fuel. And we fix it at a time when oil prices are falling. And they keep falling. And they keep falling. And they keep falling. So you ask the question, why were we going through middlemen to buy planes when we knew who the manufacturer was? Number one. I'm sure there's a logical explanation to it. Why were we fixing the price of fuel again through another middleman when Kenya Airways is the one who's buying the fuel and the ones who need it? Why? Now, these are questions that cannot be answered directly, but they are the questions that if you answer, then you're able to understand the woes of all these things they're saying. What is even stranger, I had shares in Kenya Airways. Now me. And it even used to make money. I never saw that money trickling into dividends. so I actually kept asking, what on earth? No, sold them. I realized this is a joke. Sold.
What happened to them?
Sold.
By whom?
Sold.
To whom?
I sold them.
You sold them.
I sold
Okay,
mine.
you sold
I sold
them.
mine.
Yeah.
And I realized, in fact, I'm a conspiracy theorist. I decided this shares thing is a joke. I sold everything else that I had.
You buy shares for the long haul, okay?
This one had been bought long before.
If you're shorting,
the long
I
haul
had
had
bought them the
finished.
year before.
before the haul.
Yes, I'd gone through a period when they were not making money. I figured it'll make money. Then started making money. I still wasn't receiving money. I realized, no, something is wrong here. Something is very, very wrong here.
That's not a good
I sold.
investment after all.
I said no.
Yes,
it wasn't
yes.
making sense.
All that notwithstanding, we're where we are. All right? The mistakes have happened. The things that happened to KQ in the past, we're where we are right now.
Enter Corona.
This KQ, enter Corona. Things that are going to happen. We've seen what they've said. The chief executive officer is taking an 80% pay cut. Senior management, 75%. Everybody else up to 50% pay cut.
But that's unfair to the employees.
Right.
No, it's actually a sensible way of looking at things because these aren't normal circumstances, and so you can't expect things. The pay you get is normal. It is not going to be normal. The option here is you take a way out or you reduce. I say
Staff.
this because I have worked in an industry where this is easily understood. It's in the research industry. you have projects that are time bound. You know, it's likely to take this particular time. Then something strange happened. It's a multi-site study. So one site which is not your own provides proof of concept. So you all stop. So now you have an option. Either you take a pay cut so that many people can continue working, or you sack people.
You lay off people.
I'm looking at it from a point of an individual employee with other commitments, and now here comes a pay cut.
You have an option.
What happens?
Or get laid off.
It's
The
no
alternative
job.
would have been
Is to
To be sacked.
Yeah.
Yes. So you'd rather have a little than nothing.
Yeah.
and
It's
job
a realistic-
guarantee.
Yeah.
And through this thing,
You're
when you know
guaranteed
that
a job.
you are guaranteed a job.
Yeah.
If you get laid off now, the chances of you getting a job back when the economy
next to zero.
recovers.
When do you think you're going to get that job?
As we go to the top
In
of
a
the hour,
year's time.
City, today's proverb.
Today's proverb, goodness gracious me.
It was about wisdom
No,
and
I know
pride.
what it is. I actually want to read it accurately. I don't want to say it. Wisdom is like... No, that's not what I said.
Pride.
That's not what I said.
It was
I
pride.
said, if you're filled with pride, you will have no space for wisdom. That's what
If you're filled with pride, you'll have no space for wisdom.
Yes. You know, I almost went to another wisdom saying
All right,
that,
listen to me, proud Kenyans.
yes.
Stay at home. It's coming up to 7 o'clock. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Sugar and spice and everything I spice it.
Spice up your life. Spice FM, Nakuru.
It seems that matatus are complying, and we have quite a number of space between passengers within public service vehicles. Rongai are complying, and now looking at the greater Langata Road, there's no traffic whatsoever. People are getting into town at rapid speed. Getting into the city center is not a problem this morning at all. Then we'll take a look at Mombasa Road, where we had this grisly accident this morning between two trailers, still waiting for emergency services to get to the scene. So you want to approach with caution still, guys. Be very careful this morning. Understand that the roads are much easier to ply, so the temptation to go faster is higher. But please be very careful. Thika Road this morning, not so bad at all. Kiambu Road has joined this morning. The superhighway is clear. Right after the Pagani underpass, though, getting to Maranga Road, a little bit crowded, but that's going to open up really quickly. I think matatus are jostling to find the one or two passengers that are on the road. We'll have a look at what it looks like in a bit, but for now, wherever you look around the city, it is clear. Taking a look at Mombasa as well, KFS says 5 ferries are still up for service this morning, but not so packed, interestingly enough. There's no traffic wherever you look. Spice of MKE, let us know what you see. 0719 012 600.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room, the only way to start your day.
Even gatherings within the streets that are unnecessary should not be held. Stay at home.
You see? Stay at home. It doesn't matter what it is.
It's not a clear directive.
I agree.
Just state it. Stay at home. Don't talk about street gatherings not being... No. Everyone stay at home. That's a lockdown, Baba. And then say essential service and describe the essential services.
There seems to be a reluctance, though, to call for a lockdown. There seems to be a major reluctance.
There is.
Because unfortunately, with a lockdown, there's so many other things that come about.
Yes, what do you do
in terms
when
of
you
what
lock
am I
people down?
supposed to do?
No, not what. No, when you lock this thing down. Remember this bulk buying we've been talking about? It happens in a place where people belong to the middle class, upper, middle, lower, whatever it is. When you go to the areas where the low rent districts, there is nothing like bulk buying because your income is on a daily basis.
Yeah, and so people are buying food for the family at 50, 100 shillings every day.
And even the credit that is afforded to them usually is afforded on the basis that you have a job. So if you lock down, they don't have a job. Who's going to give them credit?
And let's be honest, some of these loans that we're talking about being paid, these are people who are paying 50 shillings a day. To pay back a loan, right? And this money is taken from wages that they earn on a daily basis. So that's what I'm saying. The reluctance is clear to call a lockdown because there's so many other things that have not been taken into consideration. What are we going to do about these folks? When we look at things like hygiene and water, what are we going to do for the provision of such? Where people have to go every day and look for it. Where people have to go every day and look for their daily sustenance. That has not been taken care of. It has not been addressed. So to now open your mouth and say lockdown, it would be very difficult in this case.
Can you see now where if services had previously been provided as stated,
we would not have this problem
because this
the chicken are coming home.
Yes, exactly. In fact, this was not even chicken; it's the cows.
The cows are coming home.
The cows are coming home to roost.
You need a big animal.
The cows are coming home to roost. Though we know very well they can't roost, but they're coming home to roost.
Yeah. But I think the reluctance with declaring the lockdown, as Ndu says, is I think our government is not prepared to do social protection. And as you can see
has no capacity. It may be prepared mentally, but does not have the actual capacity. The fiscal capacity.
They may be prepared conversationally. Okay.
But they don't have the money.
Because page 9 of the Standard, Treasury has 2.8 billion. Had 2.8 billion when pandemic struck.
2.8 billion, but I just...
And we are in dire straits.
Yeah.
So I think that is why the reluctance, because...
I would even ask, who saw that 2.8 billion?
How do we know?
How do we know? So they're just telling us they have it. How do we know they have one? How do we know they have 10 or 20? We actually don't know.
Do you want to say there could be nothing?
I am saying there could be nothing. Absolutely nothing. They're just talking. Hasn't it occurred to you that a lot of the government activity before even the corona, they were scrambling? Look, there was they do this, increase taxes, do the other, but you think it's only that. We are on the verge of quarreling with our neighbors over these tariffs as well. And what's happening is that our exports are going down simply because, for instance, something like oil, we have held on to tankers from our neighboring countries because of some tax disputes. And the tax disputes is because they're complaining that our taxes are a little too high.
Too high.
We keep raising them. So we are actually driving ourselves out of a niche market that we already had. Now, if you have a government, at every sphere you look at, there seems to be some discordance somewhere, then, my friend, that problem is beyond 2.8 billion shillings.
Look at other countries where stimulus packages have been put in place. If you want to look at the US, Italy itself, if you want to look at France,
UK.
Did the people of these countries doubt when their governments said we have set aside $1 trillion, for example? Did they doubt?
Didn't.
When they've said to the people, we're going to give you $1,000 a month, $1,000 now, and then we're going to give you $2,000 a month to be able to sort yourself out for the duration of this crisis. Did the citizens doubt that this would actually happen? Was there any doubt in their mind that this money was available? So then you want to ask yourself the question here now when...
It doesn't even matter whether they doubt or not.
But I'm
as long as the government rolls out the plan.
This is the thing.
If
but
our
here
government
in this
told
case,
us today that we are going to do 100 million shillings, really it should not even matter whether we doubt or not. Can they do it?
Yes.
Our government cannot say that. It cannot say...
They can
From
say,
the simple
they
thing,
can say, they've been saying many things, but they're saying and doing.
This is what I'm saying.
Things.
With these other countries, you don't doubt. They will say it.
And
they will say it. It has not been done, but you know it is going to happen because they have a track record of having done what they say.
Ours, the track record is they never do what they say.
They just say.
Yeah, so now when the coronavirus comes in, they actually certainly expect that people are certainly going to believe them on this particular issue.
So the only thing you're sure of is that the virus has come.
Them to say something then?
That's why I go back to what you've been saying all along. This one, citizens, please, it's on you.
This one in this
Focus on what you can do to ensure that you stay healthy and well.
Don't wait for anybody.
No, do not wait.
Don't wait for anybody.
Don't wait for those initiatives. You take the initiative.
to survive.
Yes, you wash your hands. You make sure you're safe. You make sure that you place yourself in a position of least possible harm. Do not wait for some huge government initiative to help sort you out. It will not come.
And where you can, also help your neighbors to say, are you doing what you should be doing? You take care of yourself, but you also sound the alarm. You do it, because in this case, it sounds like doomsday, but nobody's coming to save you.
Just like you don't require governments to form chamas or to form all these associations that you have. This is a time to form health chamas so that you ensure that the things that will keep you safe. The information you have is the same as what the government has. So it's not as though this is one situation where you are as informed as your government. If
Mama
you want to
Nani,
be informed,
are your children washing their hands?
Every
you guys,
day.
you're supposed to be going
Yes.
somewhere. Do not go. This one, we are not going.
yes,
This is it.
Stay home.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. It
figure
needs
out
to
something within that community and say what you're going to do. Work it out yourselves.
Because if you're waiting for some golden rain to come from
Not
heaven
happening.
in terms of it's not going to happen right now. From
It's
all
not happening.
indications, it's clear.
The way
Somebody is
Kenyans
very
are
clear
wajuaji,
and
though,
say it,
they will
then
not do these things. Coming together to agree on what to do, it takes forever for people to agree.
Actually,
on what to do.
I think
No.
in these circumstances, things might change.
These are different.
'Cause
Have they
'cause
changed?
Things
We're looking at the
might
track
change.
record.
Now, I'm looking at Kenyans and some of the initiatives. Remember when the plane with the 239 passengers landed in, and
Yeah.
the
When
passengers.
it was for us to make noise about somebody else, we are very
Oh,
good
very
at that.
nice.
When
Yeah.
the passengers went to some estates, is the owners of those estates or the residents in those estates that made noise.
Some residents.
Some residents, and then now we are seeing some estates where they are keeping watch on who has travelled, when did they come back, are they in quarantine. So there are some small initiatives that people are doing within their own small spaces to ensure that they are not at risk. So maybe we just need to escalate that and have it in as many places as
I've
possible.
come to see that
Come
Kenyans.
to
I've
agree.
come to see and understand that Kenyans are not naturally a nosy people. If you want to look at generally in terms of
Live your life.
African
We're very
countries,
self-centered.
yeah, you wouldn't. Nobody's really going to poke their nose into what somebody else is doing, until and unless it has a direct effect on your life. And in this case, you want to say, are you doing what you should be doing? When you have estates coming around and having things on gates that should be done.
If that was true, we'd have seen people marching to say, close down this pub. We haven't seen that. We'd have seen people saying, look, why did we see pictures of your son or daughter or you in a club? We haven't seen that.
True, Eric,
We will not
haven't.
get to that.
We haven't.
No,
yeah.
we haven't. And the reason why we haven't, Eric, it hasn't sunk.
Not yet.
Not quite. It hasn't sunk. It hasn't hit our people. That, this thing is not just real. And it isn't out there. And it isn't somebody else.
It hasn't sunk
It is
to
you.
all, to
Yes,
everybody.
It hasn't sunk. Because what you're saying will happen when it sinks. When they realize,
But what
When
are people
everybody-
waiting for
when
for it
everybody
to
is-
sink?
Yeah. When
Are they waiting for a
everybody
death?
is not in the same
What
page.
is it?
no.
What are people waiting
No,
for?
what
Conversations within an estate, you hear. So some people are saying, so what are you guys doing about what is the management of the estate
Doctor,
doing?
let me answer your question. This is yet another illness. Yet another. It can join the queue. Most Kenyans grapple with illnesses every single day. Why is it that burying people has been a growth industry? Because people die every day. And they die from things which we know. It's malaria, it is this, it is
Pneumonia,
the other, it is the other.
diarrhea.
Now, again, I go to HIV. Do you know how many people had to die in this country before people actually realized, hey, you mean this thing is real and it's actually killing people? It was ignored. It was called all manner of things. Behavior change intervention was brought into being. People didn't pay attention at all.
And I think also when it began to connect is when individuals then became very close to it. When it sunk is when now your relative or your family member
They were dying.
started dying.
They were dying by and you realize, wait a moment, this thing can't be this witchcraft called Chira that
It's
I was
not that
thinking
far
of.
away, it's
no,
right here.
This thing is real.
It's right here.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then it started killing younger people. It started killing, meaning it took villages to be decimated. I remember someone once asking me when we were traveling around Nyanza, asked me, I understand why you people are so good at football. He said, why? All these open spaces, I told them those are not open spaces. Those are homes of people where the entire family died. Entire. As in everybody died. And you know what is funny about life? Those houses just crumble. Nature just takes over. And it's like no one ever lived
Vegetation
there.
just grows.
No one touches it. It just falls down, crumbles, and then everything just levels out. And it wasn't one place. There were many such places. Now, this one is worse. As I had mentioned earlier, Corona comes to you. It doesn't need to be invited. HIV, you more or less need to look for it. You need to pay for it in some places. You need to invite it. You need to coerce it. This one will arrive at you whether you want to like it or not. And it will arrive at you at the most unlikely place. And it will most probably kill you. Because the speed with which it moves, let me put it tongue in cheek, it will not give you time to breathe.
There you go.
Yes.
No pun intended.
In this case, I think it would hit home unfortunately, when a lot more people have somebody close to them or they themselves having been infected, unfortunately. But that's what's going to happen.
You know, there's something even that should be borne in mind. When the Chancellor of Germany talked about 60-70% of the people likely getting infected, that was listened to and then pushed aside.
Yeah, and we started asking who are these experts.
The Israeli Minister for Defense brought the discussion back again. But he had a silver lining and he said, it is necessary for it to get to that level. You know why? There's some people don't seem to understand. Being infected can lead in death. But when you're infected, it means it is now something your body understands. And that is the beginning to actually developing what?
Immunity.
Yes. That infection. So he said when a large enough body of people are infected, yes, there's that likelihood of people dying and being sick, but there's a likelihood of the immune level of individuals to also rise. Right. It's just a reality. Now, we don't really want to get to that level.
No, that's the thing.
Because a lot of what kills people here, and Dr. will bear me witness, they're not complicated diseases.
No, it's not.
Yes.
It's not.
They're preventable diseases. That's what kills most people in a country like ours.
Malaria, diarrheal
Stuff
diseases, pneumonia.
Yes. Basic.
But no, for this
now
one,
you kill by a cough.
Why are we waiting for people to die? Or are we waiting for the who is who in this country to get this particular disease so that
send them to KNH isolation?
I'm just thinking like we've seen the deputy governor for Kilifi. Are we waiting for more people of that caliber to say, I have this and this? Are we waiting for the parliamentarians, the senators, the governors, so that we see the seriousness?
The contempt with which this deputy governor has been treated with tells you where he sits on the pecking order. He's not there. He's not among those.
No, he's not.
He's going to be arrested and charged.
After quarantine.
After quarantine.
In fact, they didn't even mention his name, a senior government official.
Yeah.
We've mentioned his name this morning.
Yeah.
It's 7:15. Good morning. How are you doing? Thank you very much for tuning in. This is The Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. In the room, we have Eric Latif, CT Muga, Nduoko, and Dr. Mercy Korir, who is KTN News medical journalist. We'll be joined shortly from 7:30 by Dr. Mercy Mwangangi. She's the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health, to come and tell us what the government is. All these questions that we are asking of the government, she'll come and shed some light and also give us more advice on what we ought to know, what we need to do, how we need to treat ourselves with regards to coronavirus. When you come out of this short break, when you take a look at the weather, Nduoko will also tell us, help us to take a look at what's happening corona-wise worldwide. Good morning.
Traffic. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah.
You're listening to Spice FM.
It's mostly cloudy in Nairobi at 16 degrees. Expect showers later in the afternoon with highs of 26. Taking a look then into Nyeri at 15 degrees. It's partly cloudy. Showers expected with highs of 24. In Nakuru at 15 degrees. Showers expected in the afternoon as well with highs of 26 and lows of 14. In Eldoret, it's mostly cloudy at 13 degrees. At 26 degrees the high with showers in the afternoon. At 17 degrees, Kisumu is mostly cloudy, opening up into rain with highs of 29. At 27 degrees, Mombasa will see a high of 32 later. Showers expected then with a low of 21. 29 degrees in Malindi and partly cloudy. The rain expected there with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Taking a look then into East Africa, in Kampala, 20 degrees. It's mostly cloudy. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 27. And in Dar es Salaam at 26 degrees, it's cloudy. Rain showers taking a break for now, but will come back later with highs of 30 and lows of 24. Down south in Johannesburg at 13 degrees. Clear skies this morning, opening into rain later with highs of 21 and lows of 12. In Lagos, it's partly cloudy at 28 degrees. The humidity will fall down later with rains expected, highs of 33. In Paris, though, at 3 degrees, it's clear skies all through with highs of 13 and getting a bit chilly with lows of 1. In New York, at 3 degrees as well, it's mostly cloudy. Rain expected later with highs of 7 and lows of 2. And finally, in London, at 4 degrees, it's clear skies all through with highs of 12 and lows of 2.
Chilled Spice. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Good morning, and how are you doing? Thank you very much for tuning in to the Situation Room. This is Spice FM, broadcasting on 94.4 in Nairobi, 87.9 in Mombasa, 102.5 in Kisumu, 96.0 Nakuru, 96.7 Eldoret, Nyeri 90.9, Malindi 97.7. From around 7:45, we'll be opening up the phone lines for you to call in and ask Dr. Mercy. We'll be having two Dr. Mercys in the studio. Dr. Mercy Korir, KTN medical journalist, and Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, the Chief Administrative Secretary for Health. So that's what we'll be expecting. Now, let's take a look at what's happening worldwide.
All right, corona around the world, we see 192 countries and territories affected so far. And one international conveyance, which is the Diamond Princess cruise ship harbored in Yokohama, Japan. And we want to look from China to Spain. China still 81,093 cases, 3,270 deaths, 39 new cases. Interestingly, in China, we see that these cases have been imported yet again. Italy at 59,000. 5,560 new cases. We saw almost 800 deaths in one day. The US, 33,546 cases with 9,339 new cases. Just looking at the trajectory that this has taken across the world, it seems that no country has been left out of this. From Austria to Norway, Canada to Turkey, Czechoslovakia to Pakistan, Saudi Arabia to Romania. If you want to look at the countries, like we said, this is a democratic virus whereby no one has been left behind. Even countries that don't normally come into the conversation of global discussions sometimes have been affected. Latvia, the Faroe Islands, Andorra, Vietnam, Jordan with 112 cases, Cambodia with 84 cases, Venezuela with 70, Trinidad and Tobago with 50 cases, Liechtenstein with 37 cases.
That's a principality, isn't it?
It's a country.
Okay.
Actually, on its own. One of
Monaco, you're going to call it country? It's a principality. Really.
Martinique at 37 cases. Montenegro at 21. Like I said, it's not holding back on anybody. Mayotte, Did you know there was a country called Mayotte?
In your socials, yes.
There you go.
Olympics helps us to know this.
It
thing.
does. And unfortunately, the Olympics might not take place this year with the latest, but let's hear about that. El Salvador, Angola, Benin, Bhutan, Guinea.
Benin.
Brother, Bene, wait.
Benin.
She's go with the flow, Bene.
Understand this,
Please.
Let me help
She
you.
understands these things.
Eritrea,
Continue, s'il vous plaît.
Montserrat,
Continue.
Mozambique, Papua New Guinea, Saint Vincent, Grenadine, one case each.
See?
But like I said, Timor-Leste, which is East
Saint
Timor,
Vincent. Okay.
Timor-Leste, which is East Timor, one case. Uganda, one case. So what are we saying here? As we look at all of this, is that nobody has been left
How
out.
many countries in total?
192. How many countries do we have on the globe?
The other day you checked.
According to UN.
Yeah,
I
you
think
gave us a number yesterday, the other day.
Yeah.
98.
Yeah, so we've got
Almost
only 4
everyone.
countries. We would need to
Only
find
2
out
countries in Africa. What are these 2 countries in Africa that don't
that have
it?
not been affected.
South-
Sierra Leone, interestingly
South
enough,
Sudan.
does not have a case.
That's a good
So-
thing.
Yeah.
For Sierra
And
Leone,
South Sudan.
they've learned from
Poof.
Ebola.
I think
I think
Sudan
they
has one
explained
case.
South Sudan has a case. Sierra Leone does
South
not.
Sudan now has a case.
Hmm?
Wow. Okay, then.
Central African Republic.
There
Okay.
is. That's it. Who
Sorry,
does not?
Central. Forgive me. Central African Empire.
Empire.
The theory around this virus is that it's following the economic development of countries. If you look at it from China to Europe to America, and the last place has been Africa.
Coming to Africa.
So even if you look at the African countries, the ones that have actually reported, this is a theory.
Yep.
The ones that have
It's a
actually
good- I'm laughing because it's a good theory.
the ones
makes
that
sense.
the ones that have actually the ones that started reporting first were the ones that are more economically developed than the others, from
The ones
Egypt,
that are even
South
growing
Africa.
faster. Yep.
Yes, Nigeria is a fast-growing economy, so it has followed that pattern. So the last countries that will be affected are those that are still either
The
in
genuine
war.
third world banana republic.
The real ones,
Yeah.
the LCDs. Right?
Yeah. So that's
Interesting to look down. Looking at some more statistics, you want to look at after nearly 2 months, Wuhan, which is the epicenter, announced that it would be loosening its lockdown. This was just a couple of hours ago.
Loosening.
Yes, loosening, not
Many
removing.
weeks
Not
after
lifting.
saying.
Many weeks to
you know,
be loosening, and this is gradually resuming public transportation and allowing healthy people to go back to work. All right. China had put Wuhan and other cities into lockdown on the 23rd of January, when a total of 25 deaths had been reported. After about 3 weeks, the lockdown saw new deaths reach its peak. If you want to look at Italy, went into similar lockdown on the 11th of March, when 827 deaths had been reported. Look at the difference. 25 deaths lockdown in China, 827 deaths in Italy. That is when there was a lockdown. And 8 days after having reached 79 deaths, 19 days after the beginning of the outbreak in the country, Italy has become the country with the highest number of cases among all non-Asian nations. When China reached a similar number of deaths, the lockdown had already been implemented for 2 weeks.
Lockdown went at 25 deaths.
Yeah.
Yes.
25.
Full total lockdown.
And this was mid-January.
Yeah.
Now, there are those that are saying that China played, dumb with this game. They delayed taking measures. They were lying about it. See, that's now the story that's coming from the West.
Initially,
That
yes.
we need to revisit China. We need to look at what did China do. China unleashed this thing on the world.
Initially,
Really?
when they started reporting, or rather when the doctors realized that there was a strange pneumonia that had SARS-like symptoms, they were muzzled. They were gagged. They were not supposed to talk. They were not supposed to raise the alarm. So by the time they were raising the alarm, and remember, one of the doctors actually died later on.
The person who actually made the most
Yes.
noise.
Because of this. So that in itself delayed a lot of response and action, because had they raised the alarm early, probably they would have controlled and contained the pandemic.
Let me ask the question.
Just in
What were
Wuhan.
they going to raise the alarm over when they clearly did not even understand it? Let me ask that question.
But you see, if the doctors have raised an alarm about a pneumonia they don't understand, that is SARS-like, that's a point to be attentive.
I'm not trying to protect any Chinese interest, disclaimer. I am simply asking the question because if you ask it in a broad sense, when has the world ever reacted positively and fast when there's been a threat of this nature? They always sort of
even
like,
with SARS.
No, not,
yes,
not for the world to react, but looking at China, they've had SARS, they've had swine flus, they've been sort of like the epicenter
but that
of
would
epidemics.
But that would
So
make them very sensitive.
Yes, but they were not.
No,
At that point,
what I'm trying
This
to
is
say,
their experience. They knew.
from
well,
the experience,
so
they should
what
have
we're
been more
hearing you
reactive.
say,
Did at this point, I believe that they were a bit feathered because they realized there's something going on here.
I think they
And
already
he was
they
asking,
knew what to do.
They
then.
did, yeah, because at this point they were
Before
asking
that, they
troops.
didn't.
They were asking the guard
By
in
the
their
time they
bases
said shut
around the
down,
world.
They knew
Shut
what
down.
to do.
Yeah,
Because
they
did
knew
you see
what.
the actions that followed? Shut down,
It was very
hospital,
systematic.
what? Meaning they were not
Bring
going
in
to
doctors.
do this. They, when they had a plan in place, then they said, okay,
Then
guys,
let's roll with the
shut
plan.
down.
Shut down.
Yes. So
before that,
they were not going to.
They were still
Because
wondering
they would
what
have
it was.
they would have spread
But-
panic. They would have spread hysteria. Okay, and how that have helped them?
But now look at. I was reading about Taiwan. When Taiwan had rumors that there's a strange pneumonia
Just
in
a
China,
rumor.
just a rumor, they put measures in place immediately.
How
And
small is Taiwan?
No. Taiwan had learned from SARS because SARS affected them a lot when it happened
It
from
did.
China. So when they heard there's a rumor of a strange pneumonia in China, what they did is put all these measures in place immediately. And by now, Taiwan has just had 135 confirmed cases and only 27 deaths, just from hearing of a rumor and putting measures in place so that they do not suffer the ill effects of this disease.
Remember, Taiwan isn't really very far from mainland China.
Exactly why
Okay.
I'm exactly why I'm mentioning
and
it.
the vast majority of the population, they're actually Chinese.
yeah,
Okay, as with Singapore, as with Hong Kong, as with Macau. The point is, they have had experience with these outbreaks, and they have understood what needs to be done. These aren't things that are new to them. And why did I ask about the numbers? Well, what is the population of Taiwan?
what's the geographical size of Taiwan?
Yes, you can lock down Taiwan
And
easily.
then, what other cities had those kind of numbers, 27 deaths in China, within China itself?
All I'm
Stories
saying
will
was
be
that
told.
governments who were prepared and who knew what to do, they took the necessary actions, and they did.
And Taiwan is one of them.
Yes.
Yeah, and-
Singapore is
and-
another.
We can't ignore the fact that a number of governments also did not realize the severity of this thing until it hit them in the nose, and they say, okay, well, let's take a step back and say, what exactly are we dealing with here? Because the pronouncements that were then made, even on a global stage, was all right, okay, it's happening, but in terms of what they were actually doing, unfortunately, we have a lot of backtracking that's happening now that could have happened 2 months ago.
Do
And
government-
Senator Cotton diverted the attention of the
Of
country
the entire globe
from what they
at
should
some
have been
point.
focusing
And
on.
What they should have been focusing
No,
on.
Governments
To
tend
politics.
to know. They tend to understand the severity of the reality. They do. It's not that they don't. They do.
They withhold some information.
Yes, they
from
do.
The public.
They don't tell you everything that they know. No government in the world is going to tell its citizenry everything that it knows. They don't. It's as simple as that. They don't.
27 minutes to 8 o'clock. This is the situation. Rubis Kenya's biggest conversation. We're taking a look at traffic shortly. When we come out of the traffic break, we'll be talking to the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi. And then at about 1:45, we'll be opening up the phone line so you can ask Dr. Mercy. Dr. Mercy A, Dr. Mercy B. Mercy Mwangangi of the Ministry of Health, and Dr. Mercy Korea.
Mercy
From
K and
Standard
Mercy
Group.
M.
Mercy M and Mercy K. Good morning.
Thika Road looking
Classic
actually
soul.
very good right now. Mombasa Road, no problems whatsoever. We're probably going to see a week where things have opened up significantly. Some vehicles out on Thika Road outbound, not much of an issue. Inbound, though, at all. I don't see where there are any problems today, unless there's something that happens. We still have had the issue on Mombasa Road inbound, where we had 2 trailers locking horns, to say. Emergency services have arrived and trying to clear that up. But apart from that, we're going to have no problems in terms of moving traffic today. Unless you see something that is different from what we see right now, do let us know. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Let us see what you see. People are already moving this Monday morning, except for those who are staying at home. That's the message. Let us know what you see. We'll keep it moving this morning.
Sugar and spice and everything nice. Everything nice.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
Even gatherings within the streets that are unnecessary should not be held.
There you go. That's what the government is saying. Stay at home. And if you don't get that message, then you need to find out what's wrong with you.
That was not you.
You say you need to find out
No, you
what's
have
wrong with
edited the
you.
message. You have edited the message.
That's
It
right.
began by any gatherings in the streets which are not necessary. I require definition here. What is necessary?
What's
Which
a necessary
gatherings are
gathering?
necessary?
Yes. It should just have been do not,
Congregate anywhere.
do not leave home. If you start from there, there's no ambiguity. The issue of even meeting in the streets doesn't arise. Or if there's another statement that needs to be made, it has to be clear. That one is ambiguous.
All right, so let's welcome our guest. Thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Mercy Mwangangi. You haven't been... it's one of those seasons. This is peak season for you. And thank you for serving the country. Karibu to the Situation Room.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
Good. Now, you heard what CT Muga is asking. What is an essential or necessary gathering?
Right. So let me backtrack and start at the beginning, when it all began in China, Wuhan, probably around December last year. Response to this virus, one, has been guided by experiences that are happening in other countries because, one, this virus is new. This virus is, we would say, almost 4 months old, and we would be celebrating the 4-month-old birthday of this virus. So it's something new. We are still learning. Scientists are reviewing and trying to understand how is it transmitted. Now, I'm trying to lead us on to the gathering issue. So far, we know that the virus can be transmitted through droplet infection. And when we say droplet, we mean particles of the virus that would be in your saliva. And when you sneeze and that action of propulsion from your mouth and that, force, if it lands on your eyes, in your mouth, anywhere where there's what we're calling mucosa, or you breathe it in, you're then infected with COVID-19. Now, COVID-19, through this mechanism of coughing and having the droplets spread, one of the main ways, therefore, of fighting against it is by maintaining that social distance, ensuring you're at least a meter apart. Some people, some studies, some scientists are even recommending 2 meters apart. And so when the CS talks of gatherings, any gatherings and their necessity, what he's alluding to is we have directed stay at home. One, if you can work from home, work from home. But then, of course, the government is cognizant that we live in a largely informal sector with an informal labor force. About 80% of Kenyans are in the informal labor force. And part of these gatherings may constitute what they consider to be work. What we are saying is, if it's not necessary for you to be in that gathering, humped up together, less than a meter apart, then you do not need to be there. And the thing is, the virus is new. We're still learning. We're still trying to understand it. We're even trying to see, is it airborne? The study is currently going underway to see, is this virus airborne? And you can imagine the repercussions of if it were.
Wow.
So right now we're trying to protect our citizenry, to protect our country. And indeed, yesterday I came across a very good meme. You are actually the vaccine for this virus. There's no little chemical that's, being made that we then give jabs. You are the vaccine. You're the social vaccine of this virus.
Dr. Mwangangi, we talked just before you arrived, and just looking at, okay, then what is the problem? Because over the last 2 days, we've seen people who are clearly not getting this memo. A lot of people in this country, and we're saying, okay, so what is it going to get to get us to that point where this message sinks in?
So indeed, we've received reports, and we've seen it ourselves in terms of our surveillance. It seems that Kenyans were being casual with this disease. And, if you look at the trajectory of different countries, and this is radio, I would draw it for you. I'm not sure how you describe a graph, but if we look at perhaps the first 10 countries in terms of how they responded to this COVID issue, you'll notice that in the first week, it was just like Kenya. 1 or 2 cases, 3, 4 cases in the first week. And countries who then jumped in immediately and took certain kinds of measures were able to do what we're calling flattening the curve. Countries who perhaps undertook a different approach, and here I must say that at the end of the day, there's really no, should I say, right or wrong report. It's a lot about domesticating it for your country, and then, of course, getting the data that's coming in from the scientists, from WHO, from CDC, and understanding what our engagement should look like. So you'll notice that some countries, and most of those who did not closely adhere to the social distancing, had a steep increase in the number of cases. So we are a little bit disturbed when we see the casual nature within which Kenyans are, undertaking these measures. And starting today, as the Cabinet Secretary directed, there will be utilization of the administration police in trying to mitigate against these gatherings. If you do not need to be huddled up, stay at home. Yeah.
But is it Kenyans taking it casually, or is it that the directives being given are not straightforward, as City Mugas kept asking? Because if you're like, we appeal, we urge, and then stay at home if you don't have to go anywhere. Everyone has somewhere to go.
Avoid meeting in the street. That means you're already out of your home.
If the directives are not clear and obvious, can you really blame Kenyans for finding things to do? Because everyone is busy.
So yes, and that's a good insight. And the National Emergency Response Committee is evaluating. It's important for people to understand, one, it's a new disease. And like I said, there are many, should I say, varied measures and factors that need to be taken into account when you're deploying a certain intervention, especially when it's an intervention that not only touches on movement of people, but also on the economy, on labor, on access to services and utilities. And so the government has been meeting, is engaging. There are many stakeholder teams who are reviewing the situation. And it's important to know that part of our response is not only guided just by, should I say, government procedure. We are actually engaging with WHO. We're actually engaging with CDC. We're actually engaging with the African CDC. And part of our response measures are guided by that situation analysis of what's happening globally. What you will see going on, and especially as we continue ramping up testing, which is what we'll be doing within the coming weeks, as we continue employing different intervention measures, we definitely shall be, perhaps, should I say, more firm and direct with our instructions. But you have to appreciate this is a dynamic, ever-changing situation that needs to be balanced in terms of how we approach it.
If we were to say, Eric, please.
Well, I was about to say that this committee was established soon after the furore over the China Southern Airline. And this is when it came in. And the issue was, why are we allowing people from other countries that have already reported cases of coronavirus to come into the country without follow-up measures, without proper quarantine guidelines? And since then, up to date, until the CS talked about, better measures yesterday in terms of this is a government-mandated quarantine facility, we still have been having grey issues of quarantine. Why is it taking so long to just decide on the issue of quarantine and manage quarantine?
Right. And on that, what are these government-mandated quarantine areas? Because as at yesterday evening, I was getting calls asking me where or which are these facilities, and there seemed to have not been any clear indication of which facilities these are and why those particular ones.
Right. So let me begin by perhaps also demystifying what quarantine is and what isolation is, because that's where we get our base of this discussion.
Okay.
So when we say we are employing quarantine measures are utilized for people who may have come into contact with suspected cases. So people who are put under quarantine are not positive cases. And I hope that's really clear. So a quarantined individual is one who, for example, may have had an encounter with someone who may have been confirmed to be positive. Now, isolation, which is important again for us to distinguish the two. Isolation takes place when you are already confirmed and therefore you're in a treatment and management facility and you're being isolated to avoid you, who is the positive confirmed case, from coming into contact with any other, people who may be susceptible. Now, in terms of our response, again, we are making heavy reference to what different countries have employed. Remember, this is a new virus, and we are trying to see how to deploy our interventions. When China initiated their response, I'd like to, if you allow me, just thank the Chinese government. They've been very helpful to us, and we're in constant communication with them. And I'm sure you saw we had a teleconference with them yesterday, and the day before, even with their Director General of Health. This is what he told us. He told us we had to be, should I say, dynamic in our response. In the immediate phase, they actually advocated for self-quarantine. Go home, stay at home, as the situation was evolving. Immediately they checked and so, oh no, this intervention might not be yielding the fruits we're looking for.
Because people are not.
So why don't we then escalate this and have some form of mandatory quarantine put in place? Now, this was happening. Remember when this happened in Wuhan, that was the focus area. That was the epicenter. This had not spread across the world. Little did we know, because it's a new virus, when China was mounting its response, Europe and the rest of the world, we were watching. We were evaluating the situation. We were not aware that this virus that is unknown had already crossed borders and was actually now mounting, should I say, an undercover attack for the different continents and countries. And so when we had Kenyans, agitating for closure of all, incoming flights early on into the phase of this disease, and more particularly targeting Chinese flights, all the while now, when we review our data now, and even then, we realize that the threat and target was not going to come in from China. That we had actually had seeding already in Europe, and our targets were either, our fast transmission cases, should they occur, and more like when they occurred, were going to happen from Europe. Now, the team that's meeting, the NERC team, has participation of high-level officers who are in transport and immigration. You can imagine the air traffic that Kenya has, serving as a hub, a sub-Saharan Africa hub. So the first time we were told, try and stop China flights, we were reviewing the situation, and data was saying, no, perhaps you need to look at all these other entry pathways that you have that are numerous. And then in came the question of connecting flights. So you remember, someone can move from South Africa, jump across the continent, all the way to Kenya. There were heavy factors that needed to come into play, and no country in the world was able to deploy their measures until the data was able to be convincing that now is the time to deploy that measure. And what we're trying to tell Kenyans, that this is a time for us to deploy that measure.
So then shouldn't it come out that way, though, then?
Right.
Very clearly. I mean, without space for any kind of questions or ambiguity. Should I, shouldn't I? It should then be very clear to people. Because I think this is the problem. People are doing this dalliance with, is it okay or should I not? Because it hasn't come out clearly that you should not.
I understand. And I think perhaps what we'll do is we'll refine our communication and, be more firm. But then there's a question perhaps that, I haven't answered, and I was touching on to it. So what did China do when they had to execute mandatory quarantine measures? Again, looking at the economical, ability and their strength as a country, which is varied across the countries in the world. China was able to deploy hotel institutions to quarantine, their patients. Remember, China was able to deploy a facility within, was it record 7 days? I can remember.
1,000 bed capacity.
Exactly. And they were able to put in place those, should I say, mandatory quarantine measures. The cabinet secretary yesterday announced that we shall also be deploying this. And I'm sure you've seen clips of Uganda also deploying this very same measure. In Kenya, we are assessing. Within, of course, the next 1 day, there will be instructions from the NERC of where these quarantine centers should be. I'd like to inform members, and this is to that point, this assessment of where we can quarantine Kenyans has actually been underway for the past 3 weeks. What we are trying to do is finalize on the final logistics, and I'm not in a position to be able to make that announcement here. The Cabinet Secretary will be able to take that forth, but we are ready. Right now, anyone landing in JKIA today, we have, mechanisms of where they'll be placed. Now, there was an incident that came across in Italy, and that's why we are perhaps taking caution as we share this information, and it shall be relayed at the appropriate time. A small village in Italy or Spain, one of the two countries, was should I say, circumscribed for quarantine. There's a facility that was put aside for quarantine. It required engagement with the community there. If you saw, there's a bit of a scuffle there with the village because they felt you're bringing people into our village. We don't want to cause unrest. We don't want to lose the public trust. So this is a situation that needs to be governed with the seriousness that it brings. And so Kenyans should be assured we are aware. We know where our quarantine facilities
I hear
are.
You're speaking very well, and you're saying, yes, there's assessment from the very beginning, from December, from January, when China was taking in those measures. However, I feel that the government of Kenya is pussyfooting on decision-making. Look at Rwanda. Same, they're still assessing. Look at Uganda, they're also assessing. But they have gone straight and said, all right, so this is what we're going to do. And they're clear. I think the issue that we're feeling is coming from the government is we don't have clear communication. And also, it's not yet, the government has not yet decided. When the CS stands up on Sunday and says, when you arrive, you're going to go into a government-mandated quarantine facility, and yet is not saying these are the quarantine facilities.
So, and that's the point I'm trying to emphasize here. It doesn't mean that we do not know where these facilities are.
Tell us.
No, I cannot tell you those facilities.
Somebody was calling Dr. Marcy from the airport last night and saying, I have arrived. I'd like to know where to go.
Right. So this is how we're going to manage this, right? So the quarantine facilities are available. The quarantine facilities are known. The quarantine facilities are designated with officers who will be able to receive these individuals.
For now, they're top secret.
And right now, allow the Cabinet Secretary to be able to make that announcement as to how these quarantine measures will be undertaken. Remember, we do not want to cause unnecessary unrest and panic in the community. We do not want to handle this situation in a way that we are not able.
Dr.
Wangangi, that's perfectly understandable. However, look at a situation whereby people arrive last night. They should go into quarantine, right? As we are looking at it, should go into quarantine. But what are they told? Go home, self-quarantine for the night,
come back,
and then present yourselves tomorrow morning. What kind of mechanisms are in place to make sure that
they
come back?
Panic and
that
that
spreads
fear.
panic and
because
fear.
when this person comes into my estate and I know that this person
arrived
arrived
from
abroad,
wherever.
what do you think this whole community is going to feel?
Exactly. And I mean, these are valid concerns. By no way are we dismissing the concerns that Kenyans have. What we're saying is that we do have a mechanism in place and we will follow up. So I'm quite interested in knowing, what that flight was, what those, who is that who came in last night and was not able to be quarantined.
You just told us you know these things and you understand.
We do
Look, first of
know
all,
these things.
This job of yours is not an easy one. It can't be easy. Because clearly there are things you cannot tell us that we understand. And one of the things that I'd like to ask, if it falls in the realm of things you can't tell us, then you will not tell us. But are we really prepared for this?
Yes, we are prepared. I need to, demystify perhaps again how this response is being carried out in different countries. It's important to notice that COVID-19 is not just affecting your health. COVID-19 is affecting our economy. COVID-19 is affecting the very livelihood of who Kenya is. So indeed, the government is very well seized and prepared. And perhaps if I could do, a quick run of, preparedness measures.
Please.
Do we have quarantine facilities in the country? Yes, we do. Are these quarantine facilities able? So that's part of what I was going to lead on to. Are the quarantine facilities able to quarantine any, the numbers that we would need? Yes. Have we engaged with the business and private sector to see how we can buff up our occupancy of quarantine centers? Yes. Are we in discussions right now with these people, with these teams as to how, we'd be able to have those rooms and reserves in place? Yes. Have we looked and seen how many people did China have to quarantine? Do you have that capability? Yes. We're looking at the numbers and data. 2, the other response would be on, the isolation and treatment centers.
Yeah.
Do we have adequate isolation and treatment centers as we assess the data that is coming in? Yes. Are we working to beef up and to ensure that should our numbers reach, should I say, Italy proportions in terms of the response measure, that we have the adequate measures in place? Yes, but here there's a caveat. There's a resource constraint, and so we are working to mobilize more. Remember, you've seen in Italy, there've been a need for increased numbers of, should I say, ICU beds and facilities that are of critical care in nature. This morning, I know their teams will be sitting to review and see how do we mop up and scale up these, should I say, critical care facilities within the country. Now, testing is another issue I've seen many people asking about. Are we prepared in terms of testing our Kenyans? Yes. This morning, we'll be scaling up testing facilities from our 2 to a more additional testing facilities. These testing facilities will be deployed using the old, should I say, provincial setup in the country. So you'll have different centers that will cover the populace in the different parts of the country. Those will be deployed today. Now, another very, very critical, important area, are our health workers ready? Our health workers ready and protected for this? In the beginning, we had challenges. The equipment gear was not enough. But now we've deployed. We're actually having an incoming set coming in today. So our health workers will be able to be protected. Now, another area that's, is bringing a lot of questions, the drugs. Is there a drug for coronavirus? Is there a medication that people can utilize? And the answer to that right now is no, not yet. Yes, we saw, FDA make an announcement on this, but it's important for Kenyans to know WHO is running a clinical trial, and everything that you're seeing in social media concerning the different, tablets that are said to have an effect. Do we have stocks of this in the country? We do. Will we deploy them once we get the proper protocols and guidelines from WHO? Yes, we would. So on all fronts, I must say, and this is not just, should I say, a self-assessment of our country, but an assessment which we're actually undertaking with China and Europe continuously, having marked checklists of where are you, Kenya, are you ready? Africa CDC, where is Kenya, are you ready? We're on course.
If we were not ready, would you actually tell us?
Well, now, a very key important point. If you're not ready, do you tell your children when you're not ready,
No,
perhaps to pay their fees, perhaps to feed them, the few times you've had challenges with your family?
I actually find that, to answer your question directly, yes.
Yes.
It is a perfect opportunity for your children to understand certain realities.
Right.
Your fees will be delayed.
Right.
This is what's going to happen.
Right.
We are not going to be eating this
Right.
because of this.
Right.
We underestimate the capacity of our children, and we overestimate our role in parenting them. So we sometimes feel there are things we shouldn't tell them, when in reality we should.
But honesty is the best policy.
Yes, they grow up with a certain sense of reality. So even as they go about life, they understand that these things are... And what is amazing about children, they adapt to it very quickly once they've understood.
Indeed,
the best example for this was an analogy by Trevor Noah. He says, when a pilot comes up and says, we are going to experience turbulence, be prepared, you're
prepared.
You're prepared. Then when you get to turbulence, you know, oh, this is what he was talking about. But if the pilot doesn't say anything and then you're in turbulence and then he says, no, we are doing okay, we are fine.
You're like, yeah,
And
right.
that's
Yeah.
Dr. Mercy, I agree. And if ever there was a message of prepare for turbulence, I think the Cabinet Secretary gave it yesterday. This is not a joke.
We're already in turbulence.
This is not a joke. Exactly.
Don't you think we're ready?
And that's what I'm saying. This is
not,
but that's just it.
Yeah.
And that's the casualness. And in fact, I'm finding it very, should I say, curious that people would think or, would want to misread in between the lines to hear.
Allow us to
we are now in turbulence.
allow us to educate you on this particular matter.
Yes.
It isn't that we have a problem with what CS Kagwe is saying. It's a general problem of mistrust with the government.
Okay.
When the government says something, when you look at the long history of things they have said and they haven't done, this just follows in that long list.
It's one of them.
It's not new. Government is speaking.
So
In
perhaps
the studio
what
this
I would
morning,
say...
Sorry, Dr. let me just say this. In the studio is Dr. Mercy Mwangangi. She's the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health. As we go into the top of the hour, we take a look at traffic and then the conversation continues with Dr. C.T. Muga. What's today's proverb?
Today's proverb is, if you are filled with pride, you will have no space or no room for wisdom.
If you're filled with pride, you will have no room for wisdom. You'll give us the context of that, because just like a preacher, you're pointing at someone. All right, this is the Situation Room continues. We'll be opening up the phone lines in the next hour. 0719 012 600. Good morning. It's 8 o'clock.
Spice up your life. 102.5 Spice FM, Kisumu. Traffic.
The public service vehicles taking the order and making sure that there's social distancing even within the vehicles. However, the problem is that fares have risen. So yet again, we have a bit of a walking nation. So there's no traffic on the roads in terms of vehicular traffic, but we have more people walking to get where they need to go. The roads are clear, not much of an issue wherever we want to look at them, and they're sanitizers at many stages. Unfortunately, people are now not boarding these matatus and public service vehicles because the cost has gone up. And that's already happened this morning. You're not going to run into any traffic wherever you look today. That's it, what we see, except for the accidents that we see every now and then. But please, we're asking folks to be extremely careful. The roads are clear, so you're going to have the need to go a little bit faster. Don't. Spice FM KE is how you can reach us on Twitter. Give us a call on 0719 012 600. If there's anything out of the ordinary that you see, please note, in this case, out of the ordinary would be traffic.
This is the Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latin, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only
It's also Kenya's biggest conversation at 2.5 minutes after 8 o'clock. Good morning, and how are you doing? Welcome to the Situation Room. This is Kenya's biggest conversation. 94.4 in Nairobi, Mombasa 87.9, 102.5 in Kisumu, Nakuru 96.0, 96.7 in Eldoret, 90.9 Nyeri, 97.7 in Malindi, www.spicefm.co.ke. We're also live streaming on Facebook and YouTube, Spice FM KE. In the room, we also have, in addition to CT Muga, myself, Eric Latif, Nduoko, we have Dr. Mercy Korir, KTN's medical journalist, and Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health. Now, many people who do not know who CASs are, he basically is the Assistant Minister in the Ministry of Health. Asante sana for coming in, Dr. Dr. You have a question for Dr.
Yes.
Nice.
Mercy has a question for Mercy.
No, so now somebody on Twitter was saying after staying in the airport for an hour waiting to be told what to do, finally they were given an option. One, you go home, then you show up at KNH for testing. So already there's a risk there. And then the other option is to go to a government mandated quarantine facility, or two, to go to a hotel which costs them $100 per day. So if they are to stay in quarantine for 14 days, that's 140,000 Kenya shillings. And these are Kenyans. These are not visitors, or these are Kenyans coming back home before the 48-hour deadline lapses. So who has 140,000 to stay in a hotel?
Right. So what's important to note is, as you were speaking, I was computing. I'm a health economist. So I was computing the costs to the system, the costs to Mwananchi. Yes, this individual, like we've rightly said earlier in our show today, how are we managing this quarantine situation? Where are these facilities? And I've assured you the facilities are there and are available. But it's important to recognize that the Kenyans who are coming back in and are coming back home need to understand that they need to protect the country. They need to protect the 47 million Kenyans who are here. And the measure of saying, you have $100 in a mandated, in a hotel, so 1,400 by the end of those 14 days. Let's talk about the cost of what it would take if this person actually did not take upon this cost and was able to seep into the country and transmit this disease. The government is not saying that we are not aware that this will come at a cost. What we are saying is we need to work together. We need to know that this is a new situation that's evolving. We need to know that we're working in a space of financial constraints. And therefore, if you're coming in, I would say, go to the mandated government facility. Go to that facility. And I've heard you this morning saying that we need to be clearer in how that process is. And I will give you assurances that we'll be working on that today to communicate better how that will work, how you check in, how you get to that facility, who transports you, how we log your details, and how we get in touch with you. That we will work on, and we will streamline that. But remember, if you're coming in, you also have a responsibility to protect your country.
True.
Absolutely.
But already those people from yesterday made their own way home, and today they will make their own way to Kenyatta National Hospital.
Right.
So within those 12 hours or so of making an announcement by the cabinet secretary, we don't know the number of people who have come in and who they would have interacted with.
So, yes, Daktari, indeed, we were looking the other day, a very curious statistic, that in one day, an individual may interact with up to 500 to 1,000 people unknowingly as you go around your normal duties. That varies in different communities with different engagements. So, for example, yourself, today, as you came in to work, who did you meet? So there's the people you slept with in your household. There's a taxi that you got into or the car that you drove in. Perhaps the guard at the gate, who then remember had interacted with other people and will go back home to interact with other people.
It's the networks.
So it's the networks, right? So, yes, 12 hours. Do we know the Kenyans who came in the past 12 hours? Yes. Is there a risk for if any of those Kenyans, left the airport and went home and therefore interacted with other people? Yes, indeed, there's a risk. But like I said, we are deploying these measures. We are learning. That's a big lesson learned. 12 hours, big lesson learned. Yeah. So today we'll deploy far more and stricter measures.
Just what I'm talking about, pussyfooting on decision making. This learning started in December, in January. We knew, right? When you talk about networks and all, I mean, you're looking at the experiences, what we are seeing in China, what you're seeing in Europe, what you're seeing in America. You can see clearly this is how this virus is spreading. Now, when we say that for all this time, we've been talking about people arriving at JKIA and still not having proper measures of minimizing their contacts, but also just leaving them. So, yeah, take your own taxi, get home, share a cab, whatever, get home, leave, self-quarantine if you so wish. We really trust that and believe that you understand that this is a serious thing, that you shall self-quarantine in a family, in a household that has other family members who are completely not exposed before you got in. And then those people leave and they go to work and they leave you self-quarantining in the house. This is where I'm saying, look, lessons should have been learned earlier, but that's not the point. I wanted to ask the question that you've talked about now, that $100 per day. And earlier you had said that the government is in talks and negotiations with some of these private sector players. These are, I would imagine, hotels and all, to talk about how best to offer these quarantine facilities. Are you not talking about the cost and seeing how the private sector can also lower the cost? Maybe the government foots part of the bill so that the people, the private sector person does not feel that they're operating this facility at a loss, but also that it's not expensive for somebody who's coming in.
And
because
that's why
the truth of the matter is, yes, I really love my country, I love my home people, but I don't have 140K extra.
And that's why I said there are procedures and negotiations that are underway. And you've just described how a negotiation takes place. So that's exactly what's happening right now. But like I said, even before we get to, should I say, the private space, where you're having, different players saying, oh, I have a facility that you can utilize, or I have, accommodations that you can utilize. We're looking at provision already in our government facilities, which can be utilized. And so those measures and discussions are underway. I would give Kenyans comfort. And last night, I think there was actually a team tabulating everyone who landed yesterday and what we would need and how the situation will look like between between yesterday to Wednesday, how that would look like, and even post-Wednesday, how that would look like. So their team's working. If you remember, I think the president in one of his directives when he was speaking to Kenyans was able to say, we are talking with the business community, we're engaging with them, and we're looking at the role they play in this, and the role that they play in also protecting the country and protecting Kenyans and contributing to this fight. So those discussions are underway.
We have KCB, we know on Friday, mentioned that they put 10 billion Kenyan shillings towards, doing their part in alleviating the discomfort that Kenyans may face economically. Now, other players would be industrialists, and among these would be pharmaceutical companies and people who make equipment, people who do all sorts of things that would help alleviate what we are now discussing. Now, again, this may fall in the realm of those things which you cannot actually publicly discuss, but the question has to be asked. Are we discussing this thing with a view to telling Kenyans what the country has in store for them and what the country has prepared, or are these things going to be in discussions indefinitely?
Right. So, good question. Again, looking at how different countries responded, right? So, China, I think Singapore, most recently, I think on the House of the Floor, in Congress. There was a debate that was taking place, I think 2 weeks before they made a decision and a determination as to what finances would be put in, should I say, the economic space in terms of mitigating COVID. Last week, the president was able to have a very high-level discussion with private sector players within the country, and there were discussions and, should I say, a very clearly articulated mitigation plan as to how we'll all contribute in lessening the punch that coronavirus has given us. So yes, you do not discuss to discuss for folly, but you discuss to deploy an intervention. And this is indeed what we are working on.
You know, your job, once again, is an unfortunate one, but misfortune notwithstanding, okay?
This discussions, and I think learning from China, as you keep saying, we are learning from China and other countries, we realize that we are always a step, a week or two behind the coronavirus. So if the discussions are still continuing and we know for sure we are playing catch up to this virus, wouldn't we be caught?
Epidemiologically speaking, we should be ahead of this curve, should we not?
We should, because we knew we had 2 months plus up head start.
Not government preparedness speaking, just generally speaking, when it comes to cases of this sort, if you really want to contain it, you actually need to be ahead of it. And we've had ample warnings.
Right. So, and I was trying to see if I can draw the curve here for you to try and explain to you, you know, what it means being ahead of the curve. So I think you've heard of people saying when you have a fast pandemic, right? A quick pandemic, because it's across all different continents in the world, right? So a quick pandemic would mean you have an increase in surge in many cases. So it's a surge up, and then it comes quickly down, right? So it surges quickly, you know, it comes down, and the duration of the pandemic is short. Now, you've had us saying we're trying to flatten the curve, right? We're trying to have a slower pandemic. A slower pandemic, of course, then would mean it's you know, it's around for a longer time period, right? Compared to the fast pandemic. Now, you've asked a very, you know, important question. Are you ahead of the curve? So then the question would be, what is that measure? What is that threshold where you know, right now I'm ahead or now I'm behind the curve, right? And what we're seeing is that measure is a factor or a function of preparedness on many different levels. There's economic preparedness, there's preparedness in the facility, there's preparedness of the health workforce. There's also community engagement and contribution in terms of this function and how you respond. When you look at all these factors, depending on all the players in this factor, which starts with Mwananchi, you, the Kenyan, government that is duty-bound to protect its citizens, all the different players that we've discussed who all have interactions, including yourselves, who are actually talking to a large number of people, and therefore your change agents. You all determine how we flatten this curve. Now,
By preparing.
are we getting measures and deployed through the different interventions? Yes. Do these measures need to be scaled up by all players? Yes.
By preparedness, what's our measure? Is it that we're having discussions now, or that the measure is in place and this is it? It's on the shelf.
Perhaps it would be then how I articulate this. A discussion does not mean, a cup of coffee and people having, a cavalier discussion. This means interventions that are being budgeted for, that are ready for deployment.
All right, and that's what I'm talking about. In my interpretation of it, if you're having the conversation now, then you're not prepared.
Exactly, and
you're
that's how it
working
would seem,
on
right?
preparation.
Not necessarily. You could be prepared, but you are having discussion on further preparedness. The issue, as I see it here, is this. Dr. Mwangangi has told us with clarity that this particular box, we've ticked everything.
We're checking the boxes.
But we don't know. Now, if someone said, this is communication, we are in discussion, what we can tell you now is this. But give us a week, give us 10 days, give us 3 days, we will tell you this. If you make a blanket statement and say, we are working on it, you've told us nothing. We're not informed. We are exactly where we've been all along. Every point, every time there's information being given, a timeline of sorts, so that people understand that, okay, this is what we're dealing with now. This is what we expect next. Now, perhaps I'm saying something that the government is, again, not prepared to do, because it may not fit into the strategy or the plans that they have. These children whom we call Kenyans are actually a lot more resilient than the government understands. A little truth won't kill us.
Right.
It also won't throw us into a panic. It isn't the first time people will have died in this country. It isn't the first time we'll have had a pandemic. We had HIV. Scary thing. People died. 32 million around the world. We still have it. Malaria kills. We still have it.
Yep.
Pneumonia kills. We still have it. TB kills. We still have it. So this disease is just...
We can handle it.
It's joining
we can
the
handle
queue.
the information.
Yes. We can handle it.
16 minutes after 8 o'clock, this is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Dr. Mercy Mwangangi is the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health. She's here with us for a couple more minutes. When we come out of this short break, we'll ask her just to give us a message to the public. Now, we've been asking what the government is doing. Now we need to talk about the rest of us. What is it that we ought to do? And we'd like the government to tell us what we need to do, what we ought to know, what we need to do, the kind of seriousness with which we need to treat this matter. This is the Situation Room. Keep it right here, 17 minutes after 8.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul.
18 degrees in Nairobi. It's mostly cloudy. Expecting rain showers later on with highs of 26 and lows of 16. Taking a look then into Nyeri at 18 degrees. Showers expected in the afternoon with highs of 24. In Nakuru at 17 degrees. It's partly cloudy for most parts of the day. A chance of rain later with highs of 26. In Eldoret at 16 degrees. Rain expected later then with highs of 26 and lows of 13. It's 22 degrees in Kisumu and partly cloudy. It's going to go into rain later with highs of 29 and lows of 20. It's raining in Mombasa, 27 degrees. It's going to carry on through most of the day with highs of 32 and lows of 27. It's also light showers in Malindi at 28 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Taking a look into Kampala, it's cloudy conditions this morning at 21 degrees. Thunderstorms will come in later with highs of 26 and lows of 19. It's 26 degrees in Dar es Salaam and cloudy through the day, opening up to showers later on. And in Johannesburg at 13 degrees, it's mostly sunny, chance of rain later on, with highs of 22 and lows of 13. And finally, a quick peek into Lagos at 27 degrees. It's partly cloudy, rain expected later, with highs of 33 and lows of 26.
Online, on digital, and on radio. This is Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
This is the Situation Room. We have Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, the Chief Administrative Secretary in the Ministry of Health. She's here with us. She's been responding to very many of our questions and concerns. Now, Dr. we need to talk to all of us as Kenyans, right? Kenyans are you and I, our brothers, our family, our cousins, nephews, nieces, children. But looking at the way people have been behaving since the first time, this case was announced, and the CS has been saying, look, we need to take immediate measures as ourselves, have social distancing, avoid, make sure that you wash your hands. And then observing, even on Friday, when the CS was saying, we're going to lock down bars, and people are still going to clubs in large numbers. Mm-hmm. What is it that you would like to tell Kenyans? Get annoyed, please. Just get annoyed and speak.
Permission granted.
Well, thank you for that permission, but I think we've been annoyed for some days now. What's happening is that we've had different people try to ask us what exactly is social distancing. And I think one of the key measures that Kenyans need to understand is that when you're huddled, in a gathering at night in a bar, that's not a necessary huddling of a gathering. Right? And the idea is, and what the data tells us and what evidence tells us is your number one guard against, COVID-19 would be the hand washing measures. And I think we've seen different people give instructionals on how this should be done. We've had WHO deploy an instructional video on how this should be done. Allow me just to remind Kenyans, any basic soap that you have at home with flowing water, and we've seen some creativity in the matatu industry and in different areas in the country. I think I even saw a jerrycan behind a boda
Yep.
in the media. Wash your hands, that helps. 2, for those who may require, sanitizers, and this is in places where you may not have access to water, for example, say in an office space or in an environment where you're in work and you're still maintaining that social distance even at work, we are advocating for the thorough cleaning of your surfaces. We're being told that this virus actually lasts for up to even 3 days on a surface. So it would be useful, yes. That's what the latest paper tells us, scientific paper, that even when you clean, we're advocating that you're wiping down your surface with disinfectant every 2 to 3 hours. So you could be here like we are here in the station, and this is a very well-done station. You could touch this surface and touch your face. You can imagine if this wasn't disinfected every 2-3 hours.
Can I ask a question there as you're going on? Because people would want to ask then, what is this disinfectant that should be used?
Yes. So we are now advocating for 3 types of, should I say, agents that have disinfecting power. The first one would be 70% ethanol, and there are instructions, again, in how you can utilize this. I do have, what I'll do is, if you allow me, I'll share with you a pack, an information pack, which you can help transmit to Kenyans. This information pack has how you mix up the ethanol to be able to have that effect. JIC, and forgive me for using that word, but this is what most Kenyans understand. So by no means are we advocating for that brand, but saying any bleach, anything that has sodium hypochlorite, which is the agent, if mixed 1 to 6 parts, and why we're avoiding to perhaps say this is because we've noticed in the market that there are different bleach concentrations that are being sold. So if you read the bottle of bleach at the back end, it has how you should mix it, follow those instructions. But for the general bleach that is available in our households, we're saying 1 to 6 parts. Spray it, leave it on for 30 seconds. We've had Kenyans who are spraying and washing. You know the way you wash and pour a bucket? That's actually not helpful. We are actually saying let the disinfectant stay on the surface for at least 30 seconds to be able to interact with the fatty layer of the virus. So that's important for Kenyans to know. The third one is hypochlorite. If you remember, there's this black bottle in the supermarkets. Hydrogen peroxide. The very black bottle in supermarkets that is there. Again, there are recommendations at the back end of how to use hydrogen peroxide. That's another agent that's working. So those 3 things, Kenyans, bleach, alcohol, that's 70%, and hydrogen peroxide. We've had questions in the hotline. Can we use vinegar? Can we use,
methylated spirits?
Exactly. Those have to have, so for methylated spirit, it's a compound of alcohol. If it's at 70%, it works. And that's why we're advocating primarily for what is most available in homes, which would be the bleach. That's more or less readily available. In the public. The other element within which Kenyans need to realize is, even as you wipe down surfaces, remember of what you call the high-touch surfaces in your home, right? The switches. People are wiping down, kitchen counters, but forgetting that they touch switches. They touch doorknobs. Even car doorknobs as you get in, steering wheels. So anywhere where you have engagement with your hand, it's important to wipe down that surface. The other element that we're saying is, if you should feel that you have these symptoms, right? You're having, chest disease symptoms. You're having a cough and the cough is dry, and you're having a high temperature. And for us, the biggest indicator is that high temperature, because most patients in China and Italy, from the recent data, all have spikes in temperature, high temperatures, and then difficulty in breathing.
What's high
if you're
temperature?
having a high temperature is when you have a very high fever. You're very hot. And part of this is actually your body trying to fight the virus. So what
when measured,
noticing,
what numbers are you looking at?
So normally this would be fevers above 36.5 going all the way up to 37.5 and above. But what we're saying is, usually you would know when you're feeling a little bit, feverish. You'd know when you're feeling flushed and you're hot, and it's associated then with, the cough, the dry cough. You would know. Now, we've had an interesting question again from Kenyans, because remember, we're still having the other flus.
Yeah.
The other coughs are still happening,
colds.
the other colds, the common colds are still there. So what should I do when, my nose is running? The last study, again, and like I said, it's a very new disease, and so it's a very dynamic situation. I think yesterday there was a study that was released that was saying that as opposed to the normal cough and colds, most of the COVID patients are not presenting with a runny nose and the sniffles. You know when people are, having their runny nose. So that's one of the distinguishing factors. So what we're telling Kenyans, do not come to the health facility just when you feel, you have that common cold. Call the hotline, and the hotline will walk you through to when you need to come in to the health facility. And why this message is important, and I really do appreciate, I think today, from our conversation today here, I can see how we need to ramp up our communication and make it more targeted, is that if you rush to the health facility, you will end up overwhelming the facilities, and they won't be able to launch of another second call center within this week to be able to, serve more Kenyans, and to be able to also divert, should I say, the number of traffic calls, because we are getting about 2 million calls a day in the call center currently. So we're trying to see how we can divert and, have more and more Kenyans being able to access that facility. Not to preempt it, but we will also be, should I say, ramping up our communications through the launch of different initiatives this week. There'll be a website that has what we're calling a chatbot. The chatbots where you're able to sort of communicate and, ask questions. I think you saw WHO launching the WhatsApp line.
The Ministry of Health
will also be doing
Africa,
the same thing. So Kenya will also be deploying the same WhatsApp measure, which we find reaches more people within the country. We've had also a team coming in to do videographic translations for people who are deaf, who therefore then would not be able to call the hotline and, relay any concerns that they may have. We do have also teams making braille, should I say, information pack for people to be able to read on and see how they're able to engage. We have the Red Cross supporting us in community deployment using some of the platforms that they have together with AMREF. Johnson & Johnson is supporting that as well, and they'll be deploying messages. We are hoping that we can reach each and every household. Yesterday, I think you heard that the National Administrative Service, in terms of police, will be going around and we'll be trying to engage with communities to also pass these messages. But the main, if it's, the starting point where you really want to know more about this, 719 is the number to call.
To call.
Yeah.
Okay.
So
Thank you very much,
Before
Dr.
you run, the message to stay home, is there any plan for social protection? Because staying home does not make sense for somebody who lives hand to mouth, who has to go to work in order to eat, because somebody would rather go out than stay in the house and watch their children starve to death. What is the plan for social protection?
Right. So, and that's a very good question, Daktari. Like we know, most Kenyans, go out to fend, and not most people work, in an office environment where they're able to perhaps use their laptops at home or work and engage productively from home. What we've seen is that different countries are trying to, decide and weigh situations and see if we should offer that assistance, when would be the appropriate time to have it in place, and for how long. Remember, right now, one of the biggest questions, which I don't think we've validly discussed it, would be, and not just here but across the country, is when would this end? Yeah. And the question is, we don't know. And no country knows. So we don't know how long we are deploying these measures for, meaning because there's that time frame of time, and perhaps that explains our government's response to this. We're trying to see, how do we most cushion the Kenyan and be ready to actually cushion when that is absolutely necessary. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you so much, Spice FM. Thank you
so much.
We'll invite you again, of course, in the course of this. Keep coming back. Don't get tired. Keep coming back, because people will be wanting to get more and more information. Have a good day, Dr.
Thank you so much.
The Situation Room is Kenya's biggest conversation. We'll have the phone lines open. You can still ask Dr. Mercy Korir, who is staying in the show, any questions regarding coronavirus, what you need to know about COVID-19 and how you need to protect yourself, and what measures we as Kenyans need to take. This is 0719 012 600, 28 minutes to 9 o'clock.
Really, no traffic on the road. Matatus are adhering to the rules that we have said. However, at an extra cost, almost triple of what you would pay. Getting from Mombasa Road to town, for example, would be 50 shillings around this time. Right now, this morning, it's 150 shillings. Thika Road, no traffic, but the fare has been hiked, and that's the story we see. So it's going to be walking for a lot of people, unfortunately, but this is what we see right now. It's about 40-50 minute walk, and that's what people have chosen to do today. So no vehicular traffic, but there are more legs on the roads. See anything that we need to know about, do let us know. Spice FM KE on Twitter, or give us a call on 0719 012 600.
Online, on digital, and on radio. This is Spice FM. Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right.
So really, should Matatu people be doing this now? Because you've been told that you can only carry like half your capacity or 60% of your capacity, you triple the price
so that you can make the
somebody
money
has to
way.
pay for the empty seat.
No,
actually, no.
No. Listen, you are operating. If you don't want to operate, just park your Matatu. Right?
It's yours after all.
Yeah.
And then you can go and discuss with the financier how you're going to be paying his loan.
Isn't this willing buyer, willing seller?
It is, yes.
No, it's coerced seller. It's coerced buyer. Willing seller, coerced buyer.
even if we
You don't have a choice.
Even if we take that view of, no, we do have a choice, you can walk.
No, you can't.
But not everyone can walk. Some people
You
live,
can't. If
like,
you're coming from
how do
Katani and
walk?
you need to go to Westlands,
There's a
you
point-
will
there's
not
a-
walk.
You will
there's a
not
po-
walk.
Oh, no. There's a point I'm getting at here.
Mm-hmm.
And it's this. It's not the first time we've had this situation. In the previous government of Kibaki, we had a situation where Matatus were doing this same thing of theirs, of encouraging and importing and enhancing their own form of impunity.
Until people said, damn it, we'll
They said,
walk.
okay, man, keep your Matatus, we will walk. They're at it again, but it's not only them. Price of things have gone up since we had this problem. Now, government participation requires the lockdown we are speaking of is not just people staying at home, but sanity reigning. Okay? Report people who overcharge you. We know the price of these things. But Kenyans being who they are now, this is really unfortunate. One shouldn't even say Kenyans. There are certain specific Kenyans who see this as an opportunity to actually fleece their countrymen. They don't see the seriousness of this.
For this particular case, well, for Matatus, like what Dr. Korir was saying, it's not about fleecing. It's about just looking at how much do I make per trip. I still want to maintain making the same amount of money per trip.
Because
but this is where also logic comes in.
Still the same, right? You still have to pay the driver. You still have to.
Nothing else has changed.
The loan is still the same and all
Nothing
those
else has
No,
changed.
that thinking is not complete. It's part of the picture, one side of the coin. The truth of the matter is that what is charged is actually takes into consideration the profit that they need to make when everything else is paid for.
Yes.
Okay? I diverted and talked about government participation. This way government comes in and says, okay, fuel is going to be at this price. Okay? If we have long-standing agreements with whichever organization and it's exorbitant, this is the time to break it. Because we can't afford those prices. If this country is to stay solvent, there are certain things the government must do.
But now we're not seeing the government doing those things. And you see, before the government does that, people still need to move.
According to Dr. Mwangangi, the government is doing these things, they're just not telling us.
They're in discussions.
But
Yes.
if they are not telling us, in medicine, we say if it's not written, it
didn't
wasn't
happen.
done, it didn't happen. So here, if government hasn't told us, it hasn't happened.
And you as a Matatu operator, the government hasn't told you the price of fuel has not come down.
Exactly.
No, the banks have not waived your loan.
Nothing
you
has
still have the
changed.
same things to do.
The option here is to simply stop operating. Let things come to a head, or keep operating and keep charging so that there's noise, so that it is heard, and then something is done about it.
No, I wouldn't advocate for them to stop operating, because there are people whose employers still expect them to work at this particular period. So as Eric says, if somebody is to move from Syokimau to Westlands, you can't possibly walk.
Syokimau is a bit far, isn't it?
Yeah, you can't walk. But people live there and work in those other places.
But you can walk.
Starting from midnight and then you get to work.
I was thinking more of 3.
Now, what kind of life is that?
By the way, we in this very same studio, I was telling our colleagues here that the number of people who walk in the morning, I used to see them at 6, 5. At 4:30, I see them walking. Or I used to before this. And in large numbers.
Yes.
So I'm simply saying that people have been walking anyway.
People walk.
So people should continue
You'd be shocked at the distances people actually cover to go to work. And then back. Yes.
Let's go to the phone lines and start having questions for Ask Dr. Mercy. Ask Dr. Mercy, 0719012600. Justus in Mombasa, good morning.
Good morning, how are you?
We're fine, thank you.
Yeah,
Good morning.
I really appreciate the conversation this morning. But the issue of the matatus and the, what you may call non-medical issues that are coming up needs to be urgently addressed. I think for the social scientists in the room, when you look at public health interventions, you look at them at 3 levels. There is a personal, we're emphasizing about the behavior. There is a social, but I think we need to move higher to the structural. What do we mean by this? All these people can change their behavior, but if the environment is not supportive of that behavior, then we'll come back to zero. And the best intervener at the structural level is government. They need to come out with a very strong condemnation of such behavior where you are exploiting Kenyans who are in the same situation by actually sort of giving incentives to the matatu industry. Especially, I remember they were discussing something about suspending loan interest or something like that. This matatu industry is connected to the economic sector, to the banking sector, to the loan sector. So they need, probably they need a wider conversation, which can also give them incentives to behave better and actually support the intervention. Because otherwise, if we don't look at the larger picture, the individuals can change, they can confine themselves to their families, but when you go to the supermarket, even the sanitizers prices are tripled.
Yep.
I was in the supermarket the other day. A sanitizer of less than 300 milligrams is being sold almost 2,000. Now, how many Kenyans are going to afford that? So, whereas we are actually highlighting the matatu industry, it's a fleecing going on across many industries, many sectors, and that are going at the end of the day, they're going to affect how Kenyans respond to the whole intervention package.
Very good
Thank
points,
you.
Justice. They're very good point. Thank you very much. 0719-012-600 is the number to call. Social scientist.
Social scientist. Before the social scientist, I think what COVID has shown us is that a pandemic is not a medical problem. I think being a medical problem is just a small equation of it. Other issues are bigger than the medical aspect of the pandemic.
When anything is so widely spread, the social dynamics of that particular condition actually take center stage. Because what is medical will be known, it will be understood.
Yep.
If it's empirical, you will be told this is what you need to do, this is how you need to do it. It's clear. But now there is how we receive that information, how we ourselves perceive it, and what we do with it. And that's social. Behavior change intervention takes into account something that is very difficult to do, turning back the clock. Meaning, people have acquired a certain form of behavior over a period of time based on certain circumstances. The disease brings in new circumstances. You're now asking them to change. What they're likely to do is to respond in the way they've responded to other diseases. That is the natural thing for them to do. Now, most Kenyans will ignore diseases. If you're told it's not life-threatening, even if it is, it is given, let me use a term, it's given a matrix, meaning you look at the priority of things you have. And you look at which that disease is not going to
What's
take
more important
It is
than the
not
other?
going to take
The one
priority.
that's going to kill you first is the one that you put above the
You
list.
put above. And even then, you ask, when might it kill me?
Yeah.
So, because death isn't even considered such a big priority, because when you're poor and there isn't much to think about, you become fatalistic. You figure, I'm going to die anyway. Okay?
We're all
And then you
gonna
figure,
die.
but there's God. So even if I am sick, I can pray. So believe me, it does not have priority.
Fantastic. Let's go back to the phone lines. Shani in Mombasa, good morning.
Morning to you, Simon. How are you?
We're fine, thank
Good
you.
morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Morning to you. Mr. Latte, today you dropped the ball, man.
How?
Oh, man. The lady that was there, you said yes to whatever she was saying, man.
Yes, sometimes mean we hear you, not that we agree with you.
Not that we agree.
Yeah, because she said it's all right for me to use $14,000 to self-quarantine myself. What, for the love of the motherland?
$1,400.
1,400 US dollars. That's
Yeah.
140,000 Kenya shillings.
No. Even if it was $1, man.
It's a
The
lot.
government has the capacity and the capability to house passengers from 10 Jumbo 747. You understand? 3 meals a day for 20 days. They can do that. All right?
We actually had some pushback on that, Shani, and she said, yes, these are conversations that they're having. These are negotiations that they're having with the private sector, but they're also looking at government facilities that are able to house these people. Of course, in government facilities, it's not going to cost us 10,000 bob per night. Probably the government is going to foot a lot of that bill.
Last week, somebody suggested that we house in our empty dormitories
In
and
universities.
hostels.
Yes. Sawa, Shani.
But I remember you guys were shouting yourself holes before even this virus hit.
That is absolutely true.
It's true.
Yeah. If only it was up for maybe for 20 days, if they were taking these passengers to the quarantine
facilities.
areas, we could have got that girl.
True.
Ni kweli kabisa.
You're so right. We could have gone a lot further if we had action taken a lot earlier.
But if somebody was listening, now it's here. Now we have people from the woodwork now
Jumping out at us.
Yeah.
Yet here we are. Shani, what we need to do, you and I, is where we are. Let's take our measures ourselves.
So,
Quarantine yourself. Ensure that you do everything that you ought to do, because it's Shani who's going to die, not the government.
Yeah, I know. He was going to die. But now the ladies came with the proven sanitizers, all right? How about getting soldiers with knapsacks out there, man. National Youth Service. Yeah? Get up there to be spraying every car, everybody, man.
Everywhere.
Border. Everyone, everywhere they get to the house. Spray. Yeah, you get this before it even grows.
Kweli kabisa, Shani. Thank you.
Yeah, that's the only easy way out.
Thank you, Shani. Zachary Nakuru, good morning.
Oh, morning, guys.
Good morning, Zachary.
First of all, I have to congratulate you. During the weekend, I had time to go to the YouTube, and I really loved what you are doing.
Thank you.
Thank you, Zachary.
I also heard my voice, and it's not that very bad. I have one.
Wonderful.
Now you're convinced.
Now, Bodibu there, I don't know whether he taught you mathematics, because I hate teachers who taught mathematics and, like that, but they are good.
Actually, Zachary, I didn't teach mathematics.
Oh, now you are a buddy now.
Okay.
In his good
now,
books
now, understanding coronavirus is not quantum physics.
No.
And let me just simplify it by saying this. Our grandfathers told us about the First World War. Our fathers told us about the Second World War. Maybe we are the chosen generation to tell our, grandchildren about coronavirus, which is more aggressive than the First and the Second World War combined. For those people who are very keen to watch the developing issues about coronavirus. And, let me congratulate the government. What it's doing now, it is giving orders, not suggestions, as I said on Friday. And it is upon all of us, Mr. Ratif and Mwarim there and our sister to actually comply with whatever, that is the directive that the government is trying to give us. And they are for our own good. But let every Kenyan alive to the fact that life is changing from the way we know it.
True.
And we must be ready. We must be ready now to cut our spending. Latif, if you have got some kind of savings that you have done, can you please use every shilling that you have sparingly before it lands out, okay?
True, yes.
And all of us become beggars and, emaciated. That kind of picture. Because the collateral damage is going even to be worse than coronavirus itself. And the government should start telling people that you guys, can you start, prepare yourself for a hard time ahead, And I'm wishing you a good time, Mr. Or you guys, you are good panel there.
We wish you a good time as well, Zachary. Have a good one.
Thank you.
Lydia, good morning.
Good morning, Spice FM. Thank
morning,
you.
Lydia.
Good
morning, Lydia.
I wanted to say now coronavirus is going to give us a very bad time. But before that, the post-election violence government brought VAT on the business rents. Now businesses have to borrow loans to pay this VAT on the business rent. This should stop this business. Many people are moving offices because their lease expired in December. Now they moved into new offices. They have to apply for a new license by the 31st of March. If it expires, you have to pay penalty.
Yeah.
Please stop because of this coronavirus hardship. They should not charge penalty if somebody is late to pay their trade license because nobody's in the offices right now to manage all this. So please ask the government to stop this penalty on the trade license because the hardship of the trade license, the movement from one office to another, and plus the coronavirus is really a dead end. So please tell the government to behave.
Yes. Government, behave. Thank you very much, Lydia.
Thank you.
Thank you. At 10 minutes to 9 o'clock, this is a Situation Room. We're having a conversation about coronavirus, what you ought to know, what we all need to do. Things like what Zachary and Lydia are saying, what we can also do beyond just, washing our hands and everything is also bootstrapping and preparing ourselves for tough times ahead. Good morning. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation.
Spice FM, Nyeri. Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.
This is a Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. We have phone lines open 0719-012-600. Roderick Kinambakasi, good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
We're fine, thank you.
Long time.
Yes.
Roderick,
where did you
I
go?
have 4 words for you.
Self quarantine?
Or isolation?
Lock this country down.
What does that mean?
Those are the 4 words, yes.
4 words. Lock this country down. I think by now we have seen the statistics, how Italy things had happened. By early February, there were only 3 confirmed cases and 0 deaths. Look at now where we are right now. Now we are worried about the economy, how the economy will be impacted and all that. But what is the point if the thing will ravage this country and kill very many people?
Yeah.
We don't have a very good medical spine to hold such a calamity. We can see countries in the West that have economic power and all that, but are still struggling with this thing.
What does locking the country down mean, Roderick?
No movement. This partial thing that I don't know we are going where, but some people are working, some are not. No, lock the whole country down for those 2 weeks. We won't kill the virus probably, but we'll just slow it down until an antidote is found or something.
I can hear you on the road. Would you be prepared to stay at home?
Me, okay. I'm not prepared to stay at home, but I'm working for 3 or 4 hours, then I go back. So I've been working since the last 2 weeks.
So lockdown would mean that not 3 or 4 hours. Just stay at home.
Just stay at home for 2 weeks at least. We slow this virus down or whatever. But this thing is scary. The things that the stories that are coming out of Italy and Europe,
it's serious.
It's very serious.
We hear you, Roderick.
We know Kenyans vichwa ngumu. We are told to do this, but we don't want to do that.
Like you now. You're told to
Even
stay at home and then you talk about 3 hours.
3 to 4 hours.
Rwanda will handle this thing even better than us if we are not careful.
I think Uganda will.
Even Uganda, they will handle it better than we do.
If it's any comfort, Tanzanians are handling it much worse than us.
Actually, there was a call to close our borders.
No, Somalia is not handling anything.
Roderick, thank you very much. Mwalimu Kamau, good morning.
Good morning, sir.
How are you?
I'm very fine and I'm spicing my morning.
Are you at home?
Fantastic.
Your conversation always spices my morning and makes it better to start the day in a good way.
Very good.
I was listening to Dr.
Mwangangi.
And and I felt her as a PR, more of a PR. I think she's supposed to be employed to be a spokesman for the government. She can do that work very better. It's always amazing the way she talks, not the way we as citizens are feeling. We as citizens are not satisfied. We are not confident in our government. And we think less is being done to ensure that we are safe. I still don't understand because I had a doctor speaking yesterday and I got a little bit confused. That it might come in a point that 60% or even more than that may be infected with this coronavirus. And so we shall be forced, or our bodies will be forced to stay with it the way it has been stayed with other diseases.
Yep.
So my question was, maybe Dr. Mercy could tell me, if, for example, I get coronavirus today, what should I have in my house, maybe? Or how ready should I be in my house in case something happens? And I think that will help me.
Thank you very much. You'll answer that.
Thank you very much, Mwalimu. Okay, before I get to Mwalimu, I think something to consider, and not to cause panic or worry, but some of the retrospective studies that have been done from Wuhan, China, showed that for every one confirmed case, there are at least 10 other people who have been infected. So if you look at our country, we have 15 confirmed cases. So it means there should be about 150 other people who've been infected. And out of this, 80% would be symptomatic, meaning they can pass on the virus. So when we have 15 people confirmed, in actual sense, we possibly have 120 other people out there who can transmit this virus to other people. So for me, that's a point of concern, much as now we are seeing that all our cases are imported, but these people having arrived here could have been the epicenters of community transmissions. So I think the doctor that Mwalimu Kamau had and the concerns that Kenyans have are legitimate, because we are learning from the people who've gone ahead of us. So we're seeing that this thing where we are now, and possibly this is what probably the CS and the National Emergency Response Committee have seen and are not telling us, when they're telling us that the next 2 weeks are going to be tough, or that we should brace ourselves for this week and the coming week, because these numbers could exponentially increase. So as to what to have in preparation, I think one of the things is just to make sure at every one point that your immunity is not compromised whatsoever. Last week we had we mentioned a few things that one can incorporate into their diet, and Dr. Mwangangi mentioned them. Not to have all those manner of concoctions, but incorporate into your diet your garlics and your gingers into your daily diet, just to boost your immunity. Every household with a child always has some paracetamol somewhere. So it's time to consider also having paracetamol for an adult, just to be able to address a fever or high temperature when it comes in. But most importantly is just to call that 719 that Dr. has talked about, because then they are able to link and direct you to where there is immediate help, depending on which part of the country one is in. So I think we should brace
for tough times.
For tough times, both medically and economically. Yes.
I think the Mwalimu is also asking what he needs to stock up.
That's what I was saying. The foods that would boost the immunity.
For how long?
I think now it's just a matter of, you cannot stockpile everything in the house, but it's just a matter of watch and wait, because even other countries do not really know when we'll get out of this. Even China itself, much as it's loosening some of these
4.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
All right, let's see how
Traffic.
things have changed, and really not so much, because traffic is not a thing anymore. No chaos, no drama. The roads are quite empty. For a lot of residents in several pockets of the city of Nairobi, it is a walking town. We don't know what the situation is outside the city of Nairobi right now. I'd like to get to hear from you, Spice FMKE on Twitter, or give us a call on 0719 012 600. We have a lot of people not wanting to engage with those higher fares, and that's for public transport, and many calls, of course, for fuel prices to go down. So Ngong Road to Westlands, Langata Road to Thika Superhighway, Mombasa Road to within the city centre, we don't have any traffic whatsoever. If that changes, we'd like to hear from you. Spice FMKE on Twitter again. Let us know what you see. It's a Monday morning and things are moving along beautifully.
This is The Situation Room, the home of hard-hitting political commentary and penetrating insights about the state of the nation. This is a talk radio experience like no other. The Situation Room, a place for hard truths, debates, and elevated conversations. The Situation Room, witty, political, engaging, deep, controversial. In the room, we have C.T. Muga, researcher, academic, seasoned political observer, a fountain of wisdom in these politically uncertain times. Ndu Oko, Nigerian by birth, Kenyan by choice, communications expert, Pan-Africanist, a truth seeker and believer in people power, and Eric Latif, agent provocateur, the man in the chair, seasoned journalist, news hound, a man who believes in punching up, not down. This is the Situation Room. The only way to start
Ask
your
Dr.
day.
Marcy, 0719-012-600. Victor in Nakuru, good morning.
Morning, Larry. How are you? This is Victor Ngatia.
Good morning, Victor. Good morning, Victor.
Long time. How are you people?
It's been a minute. It's fine.
All right. Now, I have a simple input.
Yes.
I'm very much worried about this country, Kenya, and in the manner in which we treat some particular issues. We have seen what has happened in Europe. We've seen exactly what mistakes they did initially when they were, this thing came to being. They failed to actually clamp down their country, and the spread was what it is today. Yesterday, I listened to the CS. He tells us we should brace ourselves for the coming 2 weeks. So already the country is in panic. So we are waiting, not for any good news. We are waiting for the worst news anyway for the next 2 weeks. We are always scared of taking the right action, but wait for the issue to kill us or something bad to happen, then we make the decision. So it doesn't help us anyway. So I don't understand what the CS is telling us and hoping that something good will come out of the spread. Nothing good will come out of the spread. We are going to die anyway.
So what would you rather he did?
If the spread is there, for now we don't have to wait for the 2 weeks to react. I think it's time to clamp down the country, stop everybody, let everybody stay at home, close the factories. What is the fear we have with the trade? At the end of the day, if the machines will keep running and all of us die, we'll leave the machines running alone. So we need to clamp it down. Let's have the 2 weeks. Let's see in 2 weeks what happens when we are all quarantined.
Victor, are you in employment or are you in private business?
I'm in private business.
And you're willing to close down for how long? For a month?
Even if it has to go for 2 months. Ask me why.
Why?
Why?
At the end of the day, if this station is running today, if God forbid, if everybody dies, what good will the 2 weeks or the 1 month be to who?
Your point is a valid one, but may I interject and suggest that sometimes the government may not be at liberty to say what it has planned for, or may not have planned adequately, so cannot speak. So sometimes this confusion that we see is them trying to figure out what to do if there was a clampdown. Because think of a situation where they say, okay, absolutely no movement within the country.
With immediate
effect, okay. How long will that hold?
Okay, listen, I'm not talking of the 2 months or 3 months. I'm talking of 2 weeks that we're waiting, and we have been warned that it's going to be there. This is the worst 2 weeks we are holding on. So why not close down for these 2 weeks so that we can easily tell if there was any infection in Nakuru, it is within Nakuru. But if we have infections now that are going around, like in Kilifi now, people are moving from Kilifi. They're coming to Nairobi anyway. They're moving from Kilifi. They're going to Kakamega. These 2 weeks that we're actually looking at is basically the time that everything is going to go wrong. Then after that, it will be nothing we can do.
I agree with you on that, Victor. From the moment we had our first case, we should have just locked down for the 2 weeks.
Just lockdown? Yes, that is it.
The 2 weeks would actually be lapsing at the end of this week.
Yes, and we would have a clear idea
of
the epidemiology of this particular disease. We would know this is where we are with it.
Thank you.
We would have been able to test everyone.
2 weeks, yes.
Who was coming in.
We would have.
Sawa, Victor. Sawa.
All right. Good day. All the best.
Thanks, Victor.
Thanks, Victor.
Thank you, Victor.
0719-012-600.
Actually, it does make sense especially since, we heard what Dr. Mwangangi said, that in all of this, what they've been doing is they've been studying the responses that other countries have taken. So you can imagine, that's all right. If you're able to shut down for those 2 weeks while you're still doing your study, you don't have movement of persons, and then that allows you, in case there was any kind of infection at any one point, then you would be able to isolate that and do that.
I have
more
a counter argument
information
to what I've agreed with Victor with, but let me come back to it after speaking to Martin in Kisumu. Good morning, Martin.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yeah, this disease is very serious. But definitely, the government should understand that it is not doing enough because I've had people talking of lockdown. Lockdown is not that simple because people in Kenya are walking because they are literally looking for food. Literally, they're looking for food. So it means that it will be quite hard for us to be in a lockdown. Those that are saying that we should be in a lockdown, I can cluster them as semi-rich. Then
which one is semi-rich?
Then I also had an advice.
Yep.
Because Nairobi is the epicenter of this viruses or infection, what is the national government doing so that it ensures that it doesn't spread to other counties? Considering the fact that in these counties, those are where we have our elderly parents and grandparents. So I think there should be restriction of coming or going out of Nairobi.
So Nairobi should be locked down.
Nairobi should be locked down.
Martin, you're in Kisumu. Are
Yes,
you in the house?
Of course, I'm not in the house.
Oh, of course
What do you mean, of course?
All right.
Where are you?
I was somewhere here looking for,
Martin, go home.
Where are you, Martin?
He's somewhere looking for food.
You're looking for newspaper.
I always consume a lot of newspaper.
Martin, go home. We'll have the Standard delivered to your doorstep. I'll give you the number to call shortly. Go home, Martin. That's a message from the government.
Stay home.
Stay home.
Yes, those are good mechanisms. So the government should actually give us those mechanisms. Are people going to be delivered with food at their homes? Those are very critical questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Otieno in Nairobi, good morning.
Oh, I'm in Nairobi, true, but I've realized that I'm at home.
Good.
Okay.
Good, Otieno.
I've also realized that in the next 4 days I will be having nothing to eat in my house. And that I've also realized that this epidemic thing will not kill me. Instead, maybe Njandi is the thing which will kill me.
You'll be killed by hunger.
Hunger, not a corona. And it is not only me. I'm not talking on only my behalf, but I'm also talking on millions of people on their behalf. So, following what Dr. Mwangangi was talking about, telling us what I've realized that we have got a lot of bureaucracy and we don't manufacture any knowledge. We only copy what other people are doing, and maybe our situation from those other people whom we are copying are different altogether. And therefore, I tell you, if you are not in a private sector or you are not a hustler or a sufferer within this Nairobi, you won't understand how difficult it is to be staying at home.
What do you do when you're not at home, Otieno?
Oh, of course, I'm doing my little I sell things here and there. Just it's not that something which I'm selling or I'm employed somewhere. Not really.
Does your work require you to move?
Oh, it requires me to move. I interact with the thousands, if not millions, of people per day because I do it around the town, and I am very sure that last week when I was in town, I realized that I had got no customers, so I just decided to come back to the house and clamp my door, and that's all. So I don't know whether I will pay my rent. I don't know what I will do, but I will handle it when it reaches there. But
the time comes.
I know hunger will kill me, not corona. Thank you.
Thank you, Otieno.
Looking at measures, something very interesting. I know there are a number of questions that Dr. Korir needs to answer. A gentleman who lives in Taiwan said my phone, which is satellite tracked by the Taiwanese government to enforce quarantine, ran out of battery at 7:30 a.m. By 8:15, 4 different units had called me. By 8:20, the police were knocking on my door.
Hey, where is your phone off?
Yeah.
Where are you?
Where
are
you?
you at home?
You're supposed to be under quarantine. In the
Fantastic.
span of 50 minutes, there were police at his door.
I remember Taiwan is one of the countries I give an example
You mentioned
of.
it.
Actually, they had
You-
135
yes, you did. Cases.
Despite all
So
of
this
this.
is how they're doing
Exactly.
it.
They have
It's about
learned.
tracking and tracing.
They have learned the hard way from SARS and other epidemics that originate from China.
We have a call on the line. This is Lucy calling from China, actually. So she's going to give us her experience. I think you want to respond to one of the questions here, and then we do weather quickly.
Can I throw one question to you, Dr. Korir, that has come in? And this is one where there are lots of people asking now, this morning, what is the relation between the spread of this virus and the shutting down of, or asking for people to bury their dead within 24 hours?
Okay, I can probably start with that one. So our is it culture or practice is burying the dead is a whole ceremony where people have a gathering for days before you
Prior,
go to a church,
during,
after. So it is just a matter of reducing those number of days and reducing the number of people who can congregate. So it's just a part of social distancing. And that's why people have been given a time frame in which to do that, so that you avoid chances of people congregating for a week to mourn, and then when you go to church, it's another congregation. During the funeral itself, it's another congregation. Then there's another week of kusema pole. So it's just a matter of
It's just that because,
social distancing.
Yeah, the thoughts have come out that perhaps corpses are carrying the virus. So I think we need to debunk that.
Yeah,
as well.
it's just a matter of social distancing. Now, Martin talked about people, Nairobi being the epicenter, and I think maybe we are not in a position to say Nairobi is the epicenter yet, because now we see Kilifi, Kwale, Msambweni have reported cases. So I don't think we are able to say Nairobi is an epicenter yet. The government had 14 counties that were declared high risk because of the nature that they have ports, and this is Nairobi, Mombasa, Kisumu, Kiambu, Uasin Gishu, Kajiado, Machakos, Busia, Nakuru, Garissa, Wajir, Kilifi and Migori. So these are counties, either they have a port or they have high traffic, they are on the highway, or they're in the transit zones. So those are the high risk counties. So if a lockdown was to be imposed, then these are the counties to watch out for. And even when preparing all this response and putting in measures and whatnot, this would be the priority counties, because if anything is to come in or to be imported, these are the counties where it's likely to emanate from, as we have seen clearly, like in Nairobi and the coast. Yeah. Then Otieno and I think everyone else is raising valid concerns, and I think there's no doubt that Kenyans understand that there's a pandemic and it's serious. And in my opinion, from what I've heard, talked to people about and seen on social media, people are willing to stay home, but it's the what next, and it's what Otieno is raising. Okay, I'll stay home, but the corona will not kill me.
What am I going to eat?
What am I going to eat? And it's the question that every Kenyan is asking. And I think this is the right time to say it's Serikali's idea.
So this is a question that the government should be answering.
Exactly.
Stay home and then we will do
You know, this discussion they've had with stakeholders in commerce and industry and banking, maybe these are some of the things they're discussing, maybe. But it's about time they started telling us how they hope to address or tell us these are the issues we're addressing, so that people at least know these matters are being addressed.
Yes.
And then give a timetable and say, by this time, we'll tell you about this. By this time, we'll tell you about this. It will do no harm for people to be informed.
Let's take a look at weather at 16 minutes of 9. This is the Situation Room, Kenya's biggest conversation. Good morning.
Classic soul, R&B, smooth jazz, neo soul, and nostalgic ballads.
Make some noise. Yeah!
You're listening to Spice FM.
Mostly cloudy
The weather
in Nairobi
with
at
Spice
19
FM.
degrees. Expected rain showers in the afternoon, highs of 26. In Nyeri at 20 degrees this morning. Thunderstorms expected later in the day with highs of 24 and lows of 15. It's 19 degrees in Nakuru and partly cloudy. The chance of rain later with highs of 26 and lows of 14. Mostly cloudy conditions in Eldoret through the day today. Highs of 26 and lows of 13. It's mostly cloudy in Kisumu, going back into rain in the afternoon with highs of 28 and lows of 20. In Mombasa, the rain has stopped for now. 29 degrees and mostly cloudy. Chances of rain coming back later with highs of 32 and lows of 27. At 30 degrees in Malindi, it's partly cloudy through the day and rain showers in some parts. Thunderstorms with highs of 32 and lows of 27. Taking a look into Kampala, it's mostly cloudy at 21 degrees. Thunderstorms expected later with highs of 26 and lows of 19. And in Dar es Salaam at 27 degrees, it's cloudy skies through and through, opening up to rain later with highs of 29 and lows of 24. In Johannesburg at 16 degrees, it's mostly sunny. And there's a chance of rain later with highs of 22 and lows of 13. And finally, rounding things out in Lagos, it's partly cloudy at 27 degrees. High chance of rain with highs of 33 and lows of 25.
Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM, Nairobi.
"20 minutes after 9 o'clock. Good morning. This is the Situation Room. It's Kenya's biggest conversation in the room. We have Eric Latif, Nduoko, CT Muga, and our guest host for this week and the previous week, Dr. Mercy Korir, KTN's medical journalist. We are now joined on the line by a Kenyan who is in Shanghai, China, Lucy Kichana. Good morning, Lucy.
Good morning, Eric.
Well, it's afternoon for you, I think, right?
It is, yeah. It's 2:21 p.m.
All right, Lucy, so we saw your comment when Dr. Mercy Mwangangi, the CAS for Health, was here, and a number of measures that you're talking about what the government is doing at the airport, and you had a reaction to that.
Yes. So my feeling is that as Kenyans sit back and we feel like the cases we are receiving currently are imported, what is our responsibility as Kenya? This virus is being contracted all around the world, not just in Kenya. We as Kenyans have a responsibility to the rest of the world. I flew into Kenya on 9th of February from Shanghai, where we had undergone a quarantine for 2 weeks. On departure, we went through serious checks and measures before we left. These included being checked for temperatures and before getting into the airport, being checked while we were at the airport, and before we entered the aircraft. We also filled in health declaration forms before getting on the plane, which indicated which flight we were taking, our seat number, our contact. Should any of the passengers traveling with us be tested positive, then they would reach out to us. This was way back in February. And now on my way back to Shanghai on the 19th at Jomo Kenyatta International Airport, the person who attended to me at check-in only grabbed a piece of paper when I said I was coming to China, and they asked me, "Oh, you're going to China? Write your address here." So I sketched my address on a piece of paper, which I almost can be 100% sure that he may have trashed that paper after I left.
Wow.
When we were waiting to board, there was no requirement for anyone to wear a mask. We didn't fill in his declaration form. And before I forget, on arrival in Nairobi in February, we were given health declaration forms for Ebola. They were asking whether we had been to Congo, whether we had attended a funeral, or we had come into contact with a sick person. This is February, when China was recording high numbers of coronavirus cases, and we were coming from China. So now on our way out, nobody cared whether we were in good health. So Kenya doesn't care about exporting the cases elsewhere. So we can sit back as Kenya and say we are concerned about importing cases, but we are not checking what we are sending outside. In the plane before landing in Addis, we did fill a health declaration form, which we submitted on arrival in Addis. Before getting on the plane to Shanghai, we got our temperatures taken as well. On arrival in Shanghai, we were held in the aircraft for a whole 6 hours as they first got out people who were coming from the hard-hit areas and testing them before releasing everyone else in the plane, because they felt that there has been situations where they release everybody, then people from hard-hit areas have come in with the virus, and then they have to start tracking the people who are sitting next to them in the plane after they've already gone back home.
And when was this exactly? What date was this where you were going back?
On 19th
On 19th of March.
This is last
week. We're looking at 3 days ago. 4 days ago.
3 days ago.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
And when you arrive, you're kept in the plane until the people who are coming from Italy, UK, and the rest of the Europe have been tested. And if anyone sitting next to you has shown any symptoms, then before they let you out of the airport, they also take you to a government quarantine.
Right.
At the time we flew in, there was a colleague of ours who flew in from the UK at the same time, and we did meet at the airport lobby. But because they were flying in from the UK, they could not be, they were tested and sent to a government quarantine. When I arrived home, it was 1 a.m. here, which had been more than 10 hours since arrival in Shanghai. These guys at that time were going to the government quarantine where they were having their checks, and they only finished this at 6 a.m. the next morning, put in a hotel as they waited for their results. And they were only allowed to come back to their house at 4 p.m. the next day after their results had come and they were negative.
And are you in quarantine yourself?
I am in quarantine. I haven't stepped outside my door since I arrived. Only to put the garbage out. I've ordered food online. It comes and it's dropped at the door. The person leaves and then I collect it and go in. I haven't left my house since I got in on Saturday morning.
And how is the government enforcing this quarantine?
So before you arrive, they need to check where you live. They send you a QR code China is very organized in terms of accommodation and leasing. So when you rent a house, you go to the police station and say where you live, and it's put on record. So before we came back, they needed to send you a QR code where you reaffirm where you stay. They contact your landlord. They check that in the house it's sufficient for the number of people who are living there. And they also check that there's nobody else living in the house, so that when you go, even though you're doing self-quarantine, you don't find somebody who's already there. And then you are likely to infect them if you have the virus.
And once you get in, how do they enforce to ensure that you're not perambulating up and down?
So, this is how it goes. When you get to the airport, once they are certain that you're coming from a country like Kenya, which is not hard hit, so your passport is stamped with a sticker green to show that you're healthy. And they also still do some basic checks at the airport of temperature. Then you go home, there's a committee of the neighborhood which has been appointed to let people in. So once we got back at 1 a.m., the security guard could not open the gate for the car. They had to call the committee members at that time. They needed to come and check our passports, that they had green stickers. They took our temperature at the gate. We signed in our names and where we were coming from. Since then, we have been in the house. What they do is that the security guards are doing rounds. In my case, because you're coming from a green country and you don't live in an apartment building, it's a bit lax in that you can take your garbage to the door and come back. For those people who live in apartment buildings, you're not even allowed to leave the door of your apartment. And in fact, they've put a signal at your door, which rings at a common place at the security gate. So for those people, even they cannot even leave. It's like, you know how you can be arrested and then you're released and then you put
like
a certain
arrest.
radius on your ankle. Yep, that one. So in people who are coming from Europe and they live in apartment blocks, they are not even allowed to open their door. You've attached an alarm on your door. If you attempt to open the door, the signal is heard at the control room and they come running to you. So for those people, they allow you when they are about to come and collect garbage. They allow you to open the gate 5 minutes before. You leave it out so that by the time they come to collect, you're not at the door. Previously, I have colleagues who are going through this. They were allowed to take their own temperature every day and send it to the control room. And while doing it, they were supposed to video so that they can show they're actually taking the temperatures, but they have stepped that up as well. And now they are actually doing it themselves. The health officers in hazmat suits are coming into the house twice a day and taking the temperature for them. We are not going through that at the moment because you're considered to be coming from a health country
from a green country.
Yeah.
What are the
Green
numbers?
region, yes.
What are the numbers looking like now in Shanghai in terms of infections and death?
Shanghai, we are currently at 72, and out of these, 66 cases are all imported, which leaves us with around less than 10 cases. Well, 8 cases to be precise, that are local from the previous epidemic that was affecting China before. They only the past 4 days they've only recorded one local case, which was who had a contact with an imported case. So China is not locking its borders to anyone at the moment, as far as I know. But they are being very strict. And actually, they keep stepping up the measures on a daily basis.
Right.
Since we arrived now, we are told that they are not even the people coming from the green countries are going through the same procedure of checks. So had we arrived 2 days later, we'd have gone through the same measure that the people coming from Europe.
The people who are being taken to a government quarantine, are they paying for those facilities?
Yes, it's at your own cost, yes.
Whoa.
So this is how they are. It's ranging between 1,000 to 6,000 Kenya shillings per night, and it depends. So if you're coming from a yellow country and your residential is considered not to be very isolated in its own. If you don't live like in a bungalow or a self-unit, you're living in an apartment and you've got a yellow sticker on your passport. These are people coming from Europe but not showing any symptoms. So those people, if they deem that your accommodation is not isolated enough, then they put you in a government quarantine for 14 days.
Dr. Masikoriro was asking you, how much are they paying for those self-quarantine facilities? How much is it per day, equivalent to Kenya shillings?
Per day, it's equivalent of Kenya shillings is 3,000 to around 7,000. I think it depends on what you ask for or the number of people in your family.
So you have a choice to choose.
The quarantine.
No, I think it depends on. I really don't know this exactly, but I'm assuming that if you want more comfort, then they let you know where you can be more comfortable, but at a higher price. And if you're on a basic pay, then you have no alternative but to take the basic.
All right. So you talked about a QR code which is sent to you before you board the flight to China. Is it still operational, this QR code that's tracking you? And
It is. It is. So we accessed ours before we arrived, and when you click on tweet, it tells you to enter your passport number. And the moment you enter your passport number, because we are already residents of China, it generates the data about us and where we live. Then you have to enter your address manually, and then you click.
Sorry, they dropped the call. Very good information we're getting there.
Extremely good information. Now, I was just wondering if China is letting in people who are symptomatic.
I guess that's what she's saying.
Yeah.
When they're testing you at all these stages, they're checking your temperature, and whatever case if you show signs of being infected, you're taken to a separate facility.
Yeah, they are letting them in because the number she talked about was 72, and 66 of that 72 were imported cases.
Remember, you arrive, whether you are exhibiting signs or not, but you're from some country.
That's enough.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
If you live in a place where they don't feel sufficiently represents quarantine.
Different.
So they've thought it through.
And if you're in a plane and somebody has exhibited signs when they're testing and you are sitting next to them, you also...
So I think what I picked from Lucy, China is well sorted out. Yeah. But ours here, we are lax.
Ours here, we're in discussion.
I don't even think that you can make any kind of comparison between what is happening in China and the things that we have seen here. Lax is being kind, I think, just with the measures that are put in place. Because there's no... You see, this is the kind of thing I was talking about last week. There is no question about what you're supposed to do. Do you understand? People are very clear. Your door. You don't open your door. My friend, you will sit there for 6 hours. You're not asking anybody any questions. You will wait.
There's an alarm that triggers at the
If you have opened your door, somebody knows if your door is
you're
open.
Opening your door.
Right? So it's not a question. Can I go out for a walk? Can I? No, there's no question.
Until 14
It's just for fresh air.
In your house.
Walk
It's just for fresh air. I mean, the government can't deny me fresh air.
Open
for crying
the windows
out loud.
of your house. They've not told you open the windows
It's
of
okay.
your house.
And then the other disturbing bit is... as at 9th February, we've been in this epidemic. WHO has described it as an epidemic. Why are we still filling health declaration forms for Ebola?
And not filling out any forms when you're exiting the country. And I think that's a very important point. We are also probably exporting this thing to other countries. It's 26 minutes to 10 o'clock. Let's take a look at traffic and then the conversation continues.
There's no traffic. Let's take a look at how much it's going to cost you. If you're in Joska and you're trying to get to the city centre, it's going to cost you 200 shillings, and it's double from 100 shillings last week. If you're on Mombasa Road and you're trying to get into the city centre at this point, you would normally spend 50 shillings. Today you're going to be spending 150 bob if you're using public transport. Kangemi to town, which was normally 30 shillings, 20 shillings at this point, you're going to be spending 70 bob. Thika Road, trying to get into the city centre, if you were spending 50 bob, you are now going to be spending 150. From Utawala to town is 150 bucks. Used to be 50, so things have changed in one morning already. The traffic that we see is foot traffic and not vehicular. If you see any changes, let us know. Spice FM KE, give us a call on 0719 012 600.
Spice up your life. Mature, intelligent talk every morning. Spice up yourself. Mornings done right. 94.4 Spice FM.
Kenya and gone back to China within the last, 2 months?
Mhm.
And giving us a comparison of what's happening here and what's happening there.
Mhm.
And of course, yes, it raises a number of questions, but also it shows us what we ought to expect and what we should do.
It really, really exposes the underbelly of how our system works or how it doesn't work. You know, you will find that at some level, maybe instruction was given that certain things should be done. Zero.
Yeah.
You will find that they had actually agreed certain things should be done and set it in motion. Again, zero. Forms.
We are still feeling Ebola forms.
Meanwhile,
What?
DRC discharged the last case of Ebola 3 weeks ago.
Yes.
The disease
They are about
is
to
no
be
longer
declared
about to be
Ebola
declared
free.
Ebola
And what
free.
about the blank A4 papers that you're given to fill in your details?
And she's saying it's like the immigration officer noticed, oh, wait, you're going to China. Please fill this thing for me.
And not even
Not
that.
even a form, it was a piece of paper. She said he got a piece of
that's why I
paper
call
and
it
just
an
said, just
A4.
right
A4.
here.
But in this era of technology where we are digital and we pride ourselves to being digital savvy, why are we having manual forms? What if that paper gets lost or somebody throws it into the trash? What
The
happens?
truth of the matter is, nothing happened. That paper was not filed. It didn't go anywhere.
Dustbin somewhere in the airport.
When the government has documentation that they know is necessary, it will be given to you on the plane. When you walk
Yep.
out, you'll be told to go over there and fill it. That's what they do.
Yep.
They're not shocked or surprised. They even explain to you what
They
you should
formalize
do.
that whole process.
They know. This is not something they're new to.
So we're not prepared in terms of
the-
coming into the country.
The people who arrived in the country last evening, Dr. Masikori, and they were calling you and asking you, what is this? What's the information? The government quarantine facility, where is it? What do we need to do? That information should have been there with the immigration officers or the officials at the airport.
You know, when the CS declared this, and yesterday was very stern and he was not mincing his words from the press conference, I would have thought that behind that stern face, that stern look,
The machinery has already moved,
and
kicked
everything
in.
was in place. But clearly, we speak first, then think about what we've spoken about.
I suspect the minister is now beginning to experience something that he's beginning to understand why it was called Mafia House. Because, yes, he can issue his edict and it will be heard and he will be told, Mheshimiwa, done.
So, yes, sir.
But in
Comes the following day, nothing has moved.
In all fairness, this is not just Cabinet Secretary of Health issue. It's a whole
entire government
committee,
structure.
and you've seen them behind the Cabinet Secretary
It
for Health.
comprises
Everyone
national
is there.
security and
So-
coordination of government. It comprises
Exactly.
transport, which is in charge of the airports.
Immigration is there.
It
Even
comprises
trade,
communication,
everyone is
trade,
there.
foreign affairs.
Collective responsibility.
No, collective confusion. Because those are not the faces we really want to see. Because they represent an entity that is not trusted. So the more you see them, the more you distrust. In fact, when they speak, you say, oh, okay, let's hear what they want to say this time. And they'll tell you the same thing.
In this case, with the way the country runs, I think when we want to look at then what needs to happen for the message to be driven home. And I dare say that if you had doctors and pastors, religious leaders, giving this message of stay at home, people will stay at home.
Are you sure about pastors? They're the
Yes.
ones who are
Oh,
asking
Yes.
congregants
Yes.
to go to
The
church.
same way they asked their congregants to go to church and the congregants went to church. If
If
they
I-
stay
if they
and
told
say
them
don't
stay,
go, they
they'll
will
stay.
go. They will stay.
Look, again, I'm going to draw parallels with HIV. We found that religious leaders played an extremely important part in passing on these messages. Once you got them to understand what you're dealing with and understanding that they were not exempt from it. You know, we're talking about HIV infection. Can you imagine then what happened when we came up with something called discordancy, where you're living with someone in the same house, you've lived, one is HIV positive, one isn't.
Husband and wife, no less.
Yes, husband and wife. Now new dynamics came into being. Discussing this, dealing with it, understanding it, explaining it. Pastors were church people, ministers, religious leaders. They were extremely important. People listen to religious leaders. They are trusted. That is why you find somebody who you may consider vagabond and you wonder how on earth do people go follow such a person. People trust that person. In the same way, people trust doctors.
Truth. And there was
do.
Interesting enough,
They don't trust government officers.
There was a study done in
whatever shape or form.
2017. There was a study done in 2017. 250 people who would go to the doctor to find out about a medical condition that they had. And you know how they say, no, I mean, you also as doctors tell us, go and get a second opinion, right? Do you know who the second opinion was for a lot of these people?
Pastor.
Their pastor. Yeah. So it's those two people that they would trust. The doctor himself or herself is telling you, go get a second opinion from another medical practitioner. But this other practitioner to you is the pastor.
Third in that list is media. For the longest time, people read something in the papers or heard on radio, truth.
Truth.
Nilisoma kwa gazeti
It must be in
ilisema,
the
and
newspaper,
it is spoken of as gospel truth.
But it's still the same.
Imesemekana kwamba, and that's done.
Nimesikia kwa radio, but it's still the same thing because we see a lot of information flying about on social media, on WhatsApps and the Facebooks, but still people want to tune
People
in
want to verify.
7 p.m.,
They
9
do.
p.m.
They do.
to
They
radio because
They
they want
do.
to hear what radio says.
If the ministers feel they need to appear because it's part of their job, please let them do so, but immediately after. The next phase that we see, in that same platform, bring a religious leader, bring a doctor, bring an epidemiologist.
I'm liking what the committee is doing now by dispatching Dr. Mwangangi and the other doctors to go around media houses because it does that. It builds that
dawned
trust.
on them
that it's
and if
important to have
or dawned on them that people are not
professionals
listening to them for a
It is
reason.
important, but with any such epidemic, it's a multi-pronged approach. Radio, we understand. TV, we understand. When you stand in that whole
Mashinani.
group, these very people must be present and they must be introduced as such.
Yep.
This is head of Kenya Medical
Cambry.
Yes, and
Research
in charge
Institute.
of this department center called Viro. And then when the person speaks, you'll say, okay, this is Mkubwa Kemri and Mkubwa this. They listen.
They listen.
Yep.
Minister for Transport.
Sorry.
We're asking, okay, can you finish quickly so that
Your
we can-
license will be revoked.
So I can go out.
Yes.
That's the most you'll hear. So let's
Can
talk
I
about
finish so I can go to town?
We have a long way to go.
what
Absolutely.
Kenyans ought to do and what we ought to know. First of all, stay at home. As much as possible, stay at home. But then the other questions comes in the absence of social protection by the government, because our government doesn't not have that capacity, fiscal capacity. What else do we also do? How can we meet the government halfway? We are where we are, all right? Mistakes have been made, yes. It's the same. Hii ni yetu, hii serikali ni yetu, ni hawa watu ni wetu. Sawa. But because I need to stay alive for the next 1 month, what do I need to do?
Okay. Allow me to just give a brief of what the UK was doing yesterday. And Boris Johnson was there with the chief medical officer at the NHS. So I just picked this part of their press conference. And as you said, it was Boris and the experts.
The experts.
So he says this, then the experts take over. And one of the things they were saying was that this disease affects the most vulnerable very badly. And we've seen from China, from Italy, that the people who are elderly or with other pre-existing conditions suffer the effects of this disease the most. And they gave a list to their citizens that these are the list of the diseases. Go to the NHS website. You will find more if you have had a transplant, immunosuppressants, and it was detailed. And like for more information, it's on the website of the NHS. The second thing was like, now we will require you to stay home for 12 weeks to reduce movement and whatnot. And somebody from the NHS will call you about A, B, C, and D. These are the information, because now they have the data of everyone that falls into that list. They know where they live, and they go a step ahead and tell them, this is A, B, C, and D that will happen to you during this period of time, because we don't want you to fall sick. And the reason we don't want you to fall sick is because if you fall sick, it will be severe and you will require critical care. And as it is, our system cannot handle it. So for me, that's a government that is cognizant of the issues and taking responsibility and going a step ahead and actually guiding their citizens onto that.
Yep.
So in our case, in the absence of all of that, City, you're in pain.
Contemplation, please carry on.
In the absence of all of that, we are now left with ourselves. We are literally left to vent for ourselves. I saw over the weekend, I think half of the people in my estate disappeared. Up to today, I think they went to the village. There was no rapture. they went to the village.
So you've not been left behind.
Yeah, I haven't been left behind yet.
So we understand that you're telling us that the four of us have been left behind. We've understood. Carry on. Yes.
So many people have traveled and gone to the village or to wherever it is they've gone, but people have gone.
Yep.
So keeping in mind what Natembea said, when people say stay put, I'm now imagining if these people, for whatever reason, they are positive and they've gone to the village, what happens? So one, we should take responsibility and stay put where we are. Because clearly these are people who can work from home. So it means they can actually stay within that confined environment as opposed to now going all over the country. So one, if you can stay at home, please stay at home. And staying at home doesn't mean now you start looking for birthday
crossing
parties.
over into your neighbor's house.
Yeah.
You know.
I heard. I mean, I'm ashamed to say this, but somebody was having a social distancing barbecue over the weekend. I'm not kidding you. These are the things. Yeah.
So those are the things that we need to stop. We need to see that this situation is grave. And you see, there's the irony of these things, and we don't know if the virus is mutating, because in Italy...
We do know it mutates.
Yes.
That's the unique quality of it, and it mutates quickly, and it sorts out the host also very quickly.
Exactly. Because we've seen in Italy, they've had very few recoveries. Like out of the 41,000, only 10% have recovered, and their deaths are actually going up. They're almost at 10% of the people who've been infected. And they say they're seeing younger and younger people
being
in their
infected.
30s and 40s.
So when we think things might have changed. It may no longer be for the old or people with pre-existing conditions. So all of us are at risk. So when people are told to stay home, if you can stay home, so that now we deal with those people who are not able to stay home. At least it becomes a lesser problem.
The basic message here is try as much as possible to stay home. If you must step out, also still take measures.
And those measures would be, in this case, maintain social distance and wash and clean your hands.
Have you considered why people decided to go to their rural homes? Have you considered why?
You can access food and water.
Yes. It's cheaper to live in the rural home.
Yep.
If you leave town and go to the rural area, whatever resources you had, they last longer in the rural areas.
Then we should all just be told to move to the rural area. Or to the village.
You're assuming everybody has a rural area to go to.
No, the others who don't have will be left in their rural area.
That is the city.
So that you have fewer people in the city.
The thing is, that is now self-preservation kicking in the way that people understand it best.
Yeah.
And this is, of course, there's been an absence of clear direction from the government. If there were assurances about what the government is actually going to do, and it is itemized, and it's even given a time span, that sense of panic, because what you're seeing is a sense of panic, it would actually be limited. There are people who are given to panic, even if you just tell them the wind is blowing upwards as opposed to downwards. They'll panic. Yes, but we're not talking about those. We're talking about this situation that has many people worried, and they really hope for direction. People like Dr. Mwangangi are doing the best they can. But whether it's a TV station, whether it is a radio station, whether it's a vernacular radio station, whether it is whatever, this is something that you should have medical doctors, experts in this field telling the citizenry this and it's the same message. It'll get
across
home.
board.
It will get home.
Consistent, clear, repetitive.
You caught me contemplating. What I was thinking about was, I remember the Minister of Transport when he was in charge of health. He was in health. He was well spoken of.
Yeah.
And he was well spoken of as someone who had direction and was doing things that were considered to be excellent for that particular ministry. Then he went to transport. He metamorphosized.
He was well spoken of at
health. He was.
But at
for the short time he was there, he was. I think he was given Louis the figure. This guy come from the finance, whatever. He did not understand too many things.
But I think it was just at the beginning. I think it was just at the beginning of being in the health ministry, because remember, his tenure is where we developed the the managed equipment services, and we are still paying heavily for it.
I am fully aware.
It's those things that we do, just like now what we're doing, people are doing with Mutahi Kagwe. Oh, I love this. Mutahi Kagwe can be president.
Of course he can.
Even I can be.
Because of the way he's speaking, leeway. It's that short window. Mutahi Kagwe should exploit this short window. Because after this, and what we ought to do is we ought to make sure that after this coronavirus, whenever it ends, we shall do an audit. We need to revisit and see what is it that the government did. Not itself looking at what we did, but the rest of us asking, what did the government do? Because it's important. When you ask those questions of you're having a conversation, you make a declaration that there's going to be a government facilitated quarantine area.
And there's none.
And there's none. And you're having that conversation a day after you've made the announcement. What is it that you're doing? Those questions need to be answered for future generations, for future governments. Future governments need to be more accountable than this one is.
Unfortunately, this virus isn't going to wait for us, is it?
No, it's not going to.
As discussions are being had and meetings are being held, it's moving about its business.
The virus is not part of that discussion.
It's not part. It's not sitting and discussing.
They didn't send a representative to say, okay, virus, how long
this
will
one
it
is
take before you...
It knows what it's doing. It's going.
It's
ahead
going
with
on
its
about
business.
its business.
It's an equalizer.
Yes, and it's efficient. This virus.
It is. We can't stay away from the importance of the social distancing. Until we're blue in the face, and of course we're all a certain shade. It's going to take us a while, but hey, I think we need to continue spreading that information. Social distancing. You don't need stay home. 2, maintain the hand washing, and we've said that running water and soap is the first port of call, and then sanitizer comes after that. We had an interesting entrant today. Now, when talking about the surfaces that we would have naturally forgotten about, and that's interesting. I think we need to bring that out in terms of how necessary that is. Door handles, light switches, things like that
Regularly
that you would normally forget about, and you can get the stuff that you would need to use to bring that in. And we spoke last week about some people may not be able to afford bleach, but it was interesting, Dr. Korir, that you talked about ashes that can be for cleaning your hands instead of soap. So I think,
but bleach just to clean and disinfect surfaces. And one of the other thing that I saw going around, and to me it made sense, is that you use your non-dominant hand. So if you're right-handed, use the left hand to open your doors, to move around, switches and whatnot, because you are unlikely to touch your face using your non-dominant hand. If you're left-handed, you use your right hand to open doors, lift things and whatnot, so that in case you do not get a sanitizer or soap and water, you're unlikely to touch your face with that. So I thought that made sense. I don't know how practical that is, that you'd remember to open doors with your...
You need to be conscious of everything you're doing at every time. Because if you ought to be cautious about touching your face, that means you're cautious about how many times a day? Those are very many times.
Very many times.
Yeah, so it's easier for you to be, when you're approaching a surface, you're like, okay, left.
Go left. Use your phone left.
Yeah, use your phone. Use your phone left hand.
But these are extraordinary times, so maybe we need to think...
measures need to be brought in.
And hopefully this can be sustainable. Somebody over the weekend was telling me that for us for any human to change behavior, they need about 21 days at the very least for it to become part of them. Is this true?
It takes longer than that, because ask yourself any habit you have, how long it took to actually acquire it. What the person means is the actual process of unlearning can begin then. It's not as though you will have unlearned in 21 days, 3 weeks, to unlearn something of a lifetime. No. The process of beginning to unlearning, you can actually begin, because now it's beginning to enter your system. Now the process can begin. Before then, you're just playing around with it.
So we still have another 2 weeks.
We not only do we have 2 weeks, the thing about Kenyans, I'm talking about Kenyans, forget their resilience, that is true. Their ability to adapt is actually phenomenally profound.
Yeah.
But in the absence of direction, it's not useful. It's a gift that we have. See, anyone who studied epidemiology knows about the epidemiological triangle, okay, where you look at the agent, you look at the host, you look at the environment, and you say these things, when they coalesce and come together, then we have this. Because it gives you an ability to know and understand, it also points you to the way you could actually mediate. These things aren't strange. They're not things that are unknown. But what we're discussing here are things which are unknown to our government. The ability to actually make a decision, implement it, and do good by the people. This is strange to them. They're used to taking us for granted. They're used to telling us things in the hope that we'll just believe, and some other catastrophe will come which will overtake it. We don't talk about locusts. We don't talk about the flooding. We don't talk about these things anymore. And they haven't gone anywhere.
Cholera.
We don't talk about the diseases that we had before this.
Cancer.
And they were top. They didn't reduce in terms of the priority.
Road traffic accidents.
All these things, yes. So, this is what happens when you play hooky with your responsibilities. Something real catches up and threatens you, and it catches you, not literally flat-footed, but bare-bottomed. This one, there's very little you can do about it.
Tomorrow, let's talk about what the government ought to do. I'm talking about the government structures, right? So all this money that is required to be redirected, all these government workers who are not going to work, if corporates and major organizations are bootstrapping, what bootstrapping measures is the government taking in terms of stopping to spend on priority areas? And let's also talk about the government employees.
Supporting the vulnerable.
How much we pay to government employees. Should government workers take a pay cut?
What do we do with patients who are already in hospital and already being taken care of?
Very many things. Siti, as we come to the end of the show.
If you are filled with pride, you will leave no room for wisdom. That is what it actually says. Now I'll paraphrase.
Right.
If you're full of yourself, you are damned.
Some great paraphrasing there, man.
If you're full of yourself, you're damned.
You're damned.
So does it mean if you're full of wisdom, there's no room for pride?
It is not possible to be full of wisdom.
And pride at the same time.
No. And also wisdom is, by its very nature, it's something that is renewable every morning.
Like the mercies of the Lord.
Yes. It's a never-ending process. So you will never be full of it. And it also, when one even gets a gleam of wisdom, then you then begin to understand that A, you don't have a monopoly on it. You also understand there's no end to it. And you also understand that you're going to continue learning if you really are wise. It's only that person who isn't wise who believes that they actually know and understand and that they have demigod status. So in this state, we should just believe. And when you question, you're wrong. That's being full of yourself. And that is a trait that the government exhibits very, very, very often. They don't want to be questioned. They don't want to be told. They take advice very badly. And when they say something, they believe it's the entire truth. It cannot possibly be so long as the government is peopled by human beings like the others in the country.
Okay. Final words, Dr. Mercy Korir.
Stay safe. Stay at home as much as possible. If in doubt, call 719 on the coronavirus. Call 719. Let us all stay safe for ourselves and for our society.
Social distancing. Maintain social distancing, folks. Wash your hands and keep your surfaces clean and disinfected at home.
Mr. Wisdom?
Let the discussions continue.
All right. Thank you for tuning in to the Situation Room today. Join us tomorrow, 6 a.m. to 10 a.m. We'll be right here. We'll be talking about the coronavirus and all the other aspects of coronavirus, like the economy and everything else. Remember what Dr. has said and Ndu has said. It's very important. Stay at home, social distancing, wash your hands. Basically, just mature up. If you're taking this casually, grow up. It's about time. It's serious, like Mutai Kagwe said. See you tomorrow. Good morning. It's 10 o'clock.